Hello, fight nerds, gamblers, and everything in between. Shout out to my guy. Had to use the slogan off the top, but welcome back to the MMA archive. Thank you so much for all the support. Just want to start there. I've really been seeing the love, and I really appreciate it. I mean, almost at 300 followers on Twitter, so slowly making the climb. It's been really fun. It's so crazy how much faster it's been from 200 to 300 versus 100 to 200. It
Yeah.
is nuts. So I really appreciate you guys and all the support I've been getting. It's been showing on the videos as well as on our downloads. So thank you so much. It's always been a pleasure to do this. And I haven't even really been looking at this stuff until recently. And I'm like, wow, compared to before, it's actually kind of nuts how many of you people actually give a shit. So thank you so much. It's a blessing and it always warms my heart whenever I see it. But we got a guest, baby. My guy Eric is here. Please, off the top, just let them know where they can find all your content and all the good stuff you got going on.
Yeah, for sure. You dropped the fight nerds at the start there, so I better show the shirt. I got the fight nerds and dirty gamblers are my people shirt on. Might as well get the plug out there. You can find that in my online store. It's in my link tree in my Twitter. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Erikbetsfights, on YouTube Erikbetsfights, and on Instagram I'm Eric_bets_fights. And like I said, I got that link tree with the. I got an online store. I made some just kind of dumb, fun, nerdy MMA fan mugs and shirts and stuff that are kind of cool. But yeah, check it out.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And don't forget the YouTube channels, you guys, OTS Media, as well as Eric Beth Fights. You gotta get all the content where you could get it, baby. But let's get into this because we have so much to cover between last week and this week.
Yeah, dude.
It's kind of dizzying. I'm gonna have to remind myself often, like, hey, we gotta move on here. Last week's card. So UFC Vegas 53, I believe.
Yep.
Too hard to keep up with at this point. Um, there's a couple fights I wanted to talk about just quickly. The first one being Andre Philly versus Joanderson Brito. First of all, I just find it hilarious that Andre Feely was in both of our parlays on your Thursday show,
Yeah, yeah.
and then boom, just gets finished in round one. For me, I always sort of knew that was a possibility. I even on my show the week prior, I actually picked Joe Anderson Brito, and I made that exact case for what could happen. But when I'm looking at the lines, I'm like, it makes more sense for Feely to win. So why not actually put the coin on that one? And it bit me in the ass big time.
Yeah, the very last bet, I was also picking Feely to win, and I did have him in not only the parlays we talked about on the show. I did have him in an actual parlay that I tracked too, that lost, of course. But the very last bet that I put in for that card, and it was like right before the card started. I was looking through some props and I found Joe Anderson Brito by KO in round one was plus 2,200, which is an insane line because that was his best path to victory, right? So I didn't put a lot on it. It was just a little sprinkle, but I put enough on that it did hit, and I won like a little over 4 units on just a little sprinkle at that plus 2,200. So glad I did that because yeah, it was literally a last minute thing. I was like, if Feely's gonna lose, this is how it's gonna happen. So I threw it in there, and very glad I did.
Yeah, man, and just a crazy knockout too. Like the punch that landed was just from your grandmother's house, just all the way from cocked it back and everything. And I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I always find it tough to watch whenever Feely has one of these moments, whether it's this one or the even the Yair Rodriguez switch kick, jumping switch kick knockout a long time ago now. I always felt like he was on the same sort of career trajectory as Max Holloway at one point. Like I always looked at him as that prospect that is going to be the future of this division, and it doesn't seem like he could ever get over that hump, man. Always a one matchup that sort of sets him back.
Yeah, and I was actually looking at Feely's record. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, but I hadn't looked at it in a long time, and I didn't realize that he did win loss for a long time, and I don't think he's ever had more than like 2 wins in a row. So and yeah,
Mhm.
I didn't realize that. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but yeah, he's one of those guys that I mean, I still think fairly highly of him, but yeah, he definitely hasn't lived up to kind of what I thought of him at one point. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm rooting for the best for him. Like, let's be
Yeah,
honest. I feel like he's one of the guys that I've grown to be a fan of. The Where the Wild Things Are tattoo. I mean,
yeah.
you just gotta love it. But yeah, the big knockout, big debut for Joannes and Brito. That was crazy. But moving on, we got the main event, Rob Font versus Marlon Chito Vera. I was super pumped for this one. I was actually very surprised with the way it went down. I think you sort of look at the highlights, you look at the big moments in this fight, and you'll be led to believe that this was like a shutout by Marlon Vera. And in all honesty, it wasn't. Like this was a really close fight. Besides those big moments for Chito Vera that just swing those rounds in his favor, I think that's a big credit to Rob Font. I think there was something going on even before the fight coming into it, health wise, that obviously forced him to miss weight. And he just plowed through all of that and still gave a hell of a performance, if you ask me, through all that adversity. The fact that he's never still in his UFC career been stopped by strikes is kind of nuts considering all the wars he's been in.
Yeah, and I think I saw somewhere, I don't remember the numbers obviously, but I think I saw somewhere that this fight broke the record for um the largest, like the fighter that won a fight with having the fewest number of strikes compared to his opponent. I didn't explain that very well, but you know what I mean. Like Font outlanded him by a larger number than any fighter ever has that then lost the fight. So and it was a pretty significant number. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, that is kind of interesting because yeah, it was like, Font's landing more. But we see that a lot, just not quite to this level. But that's something that I talk about a lot when I'm doing breakdown videos too, is like, okay, I think this guy is going to land more strikes. He might land twice as many strikes, but when this guy lands, it's going to knock his head back, and there's going to be a lot more impact, and the judges are going to notice that more. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we kind of have to take into account when capping and when talking about fights, is that the guy who lands the most punches isn't always the guy who's going to win.
Definitely,
Yeah.
it's really about damage, and the emphasis in the scoring, I feel like, has really reflected that lately,
Yep.
which made the co-main event decision so fucking strange because it just made all the sense in the world for Jake Collier to win that, and somehow Andre Arlovsky got the decision once again. But sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Main event time. I feel like I always knew that Chito Vera was a good fighter. I mean, I wasn't surprised when he beat Sean O'Malley the way he did. I always knew he had the mean streak in him. And it's been really cool to see him sort of develop into this character now in the UFC, where it's not just I'm coming here. I feel like there's been a real heel turn in his career. Like it went from, I'm fighting for my family. His daughter has that condition that he fought through in order to get her surgeries so that she could smile again. Like just a beautiful story, and that's still there. Don't get me wrong, he's still that family man. We saw that in the cage after the main event. But just the heel turn that he's had in the last couple years, I think he saw the writing on the wall. He's a commentator for the UFC. He knows what people want, and I think he really put himself in a position to be a sort of rising star now in the division because of the way he's handled everything and sort of become that villain. I mean, even in the middle of fights with Frankie Edgar, you talking shit to Frankie Edgar. That's like the nicest dude around. So it's been really cool to see his sort of heel turn, and the skills back it up, man. I'm a big fan of what he has to offer and his volume, his tenaciousness. But I'm worried about him creeping into that top five. I'm worried about him, but it's going to be exciting fights no matter what.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Like, regardless of what your opinion of him might be as far as how he's done it, or the heel turn or whatever, like there's no doubt that his star has risen immensely in the last year or even 6 months or whatever it might be. Like, I mean, he's definitely a guy that hardcore fans have known for a long time was very good. He's it's not like he's brand new on the radar or something, but I think he's definitely, especially with this win over Font, he's gone from being a guy who was kind of on the fringes to somebody that we have to take pretty seriously now. And like you said about, you're a little worried about him going into the top five. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here, but he's definitely an exciting addition to that upper elite level, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, man. The problem with being a fan of bantamweights in general is it's like it's just a murderer's row, dude. There's just
Yeah.
so many good fighters at 135. It's really tough matchup wise to find your way to a title, let alone become the champ. So really excited to see who he gets matched up with next. I feel like
Yep.
it definitely has to be top five for sure. But awesome night of fights, and on to the next one as always, baby. UFC 274. I'm so excited for this card, man. Like I
Oh, I
didn't
can
realize
imagine.
how pumped I was until I was doing the prep for this week, and it's just been, dude. There's a lot of great fights on this. There's also a lot of sort of quality MMA moments that we're gonna have. Like, and I'm excited to get into talking to those a little bit later. But let's start it off with the first fight in the bantamweight division. We got Journey Newson versus Ferny Garcia. Would you mind giving us the lines for that, Eric?
Yeah, Fernie Garcia is the favorite at minus 147. Comeback on Newson is plus 150.
Yeah. So I'm since I made you start on your show, it's only right that I start on mine. I think this fight is gonna be it's really gonna be a tale of who hits first. I think both of these guys have very good reckless aggression. Their defensive responsibility, on the other hand, is a little tough to back on. I think we've seen Journey Newson hang in there with some of the best guys this division has to offer. Let's be clear. I think Randy Costa and Ricardo Ramos are both great fighters that could eventually find themselves in that top 20, top 15 range. So it's no shame to lose to those guys, but at the same time, um, it's tough when you're brought into the UFC and off rip you're facing two very top quality guys. You end up getting finished and by one of them, and now you're sort of trying to fight your way, like keep your spot. So this is a tough matchup for Journey Newson because of that sort of added pressure. I think stylistically, both of these guys, they see a lot of things in each other. That they have in their own their own arsenal. I'll be clear about that. But I think the big dynamic is going to be Journey Newson sort of unloading that big power and the in between ranges. So if he's able to land that big power, I won't be surprised if he's able to knock Fernie Garcia out. But at the same time, I feel like once the power has been thrown, there's a good there's a good window for Fernie to Garcia to land some damage back. And I think in all the highlights you see where he's getting cracked, it's sort of in those in between phases. And I don't know what it is. I feel like similar to Michael Chandler, I feel like that body type, as far as being super muscular and super explosive, it lends to those sort of gaps where you're able to be sort of not able to be, where you're in a position where technically it's hard for you to recover fast enough to avoid what's coming back at you. And I think that's ultimately what's going to be the sort of end all be all here. I think Fernie Garcia ends up stopping him. So that's my pick. I'm going with Fernie Garcia in this one. I think you are muted, good sir.
There we go. I kept clicking it and it wasn't unmuting for some reason. Sorry about that. I want to tell a quick story related to this. I actually was there live for Journey Newson's last fight before fighting in the UFC. It was in this event called Final Fight Championship, and their middleweight champion is a guy whose strength and conditioning coach is a former student of mine. Sorry, that was a lot to follow. But anyway, and he's the middleweight champion of Final Fight Championship, which is based out of Vegas. So when they come here, they invite me to go hang out, and I got to kind of go like behind the scenes and hang out and stuff, and it was really cool. But anyway, Journey
Nice.
Newson fought on that show, and I saw Sean Shelby there. And I remember thinking, oh, I wonder who Sean Shelby is like scouting, or I wonder. So then I kept thinking like somebody that was on that card is going to end up in the UFC, and then Journey Newson was in the UFC. Short, he beat the opponent he fought there. He won by knockout in like a minute or something. So I guess it makes sense that he ended up being the guy that got into the UFC. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, I don't feel like I have a super strong read on this fight. I think, Journey Newson, he likes to come out with the kind of crazy. It's clear that he did some taekwondo training. I looked that up after I was watching the tape, and yeah, I think it said he started training in taekwondo when he was like 12 or something. You see him come with some kind of crazy fun kicks and stuff, whereas Fernie Garcia is like a little bit more of a, a little bit more of a standard boxer. I think Newson's a little bit wilder. You kind of talked about that with both of them. They both have a little bit of that. I think Garcia has the ability to be a little bit more buttoned up and a little bit more, um, minding his p's and q's. I think I don't have a super strong read on how this fight goes, but I think that I do kind of lean Ferny Garcia a little bit if I have to make a pick. But as far as how it's going to play out, I don't feel like I have a real strong read on that. But yeah, I'll lean Ferny Garcia. I'll say either a decision or a late finish.
For sure. I think this is one of those that it's dog or pass, and you're gonna be crossing your fingers watching this either way. So yeah, I'm staying far away from this one, but it's gonna be
Yeah,
a fun fight to watch. I
it
promise
should be.
that
Yeah,
for sure. Of course, because I said it now, it's gonna be a slog. But next up, Ariani Carnalosi versus Lupi Godinez. I just want to say this off the top. Shout out to my guy Wiz MMA. He was on the show probably I will say over a month 2 months ago now probably, and we were talking about the Carol Rosa fight. I believe she was going up, and let me see, I can pull that up right
Sarah
now.
McMahon probably.
Yes, we were talking about that fight, and for some reason, my brain just thought that it was Ariani Carnalosi. So I'm talking about how she's just so stacked for that division, as far as like muscle wise, and Wiz is looking at me like, yeah, like what the fuck are you talking about? So that was hilarious, Wiz. If you're watching, so funny now that I know who Ariana Carnalosi is exactly. It's funny that I made that comparison back then because I
Yeah.
totally was wrong about who I was talking about in the goddamn matchup. But this matchup, actually, in my opinion, I'm gonna let you go first. But all I got to say about this matchup is, this is another one that I think is gonna be super exciting to watch.
Yeah, I I actually did place a bet on this fight. I actually think it might have been the first bet that I placed on this whole card. I got Ariani Carnalosi at plus 170. Um, as far as a pick, I think I do probably lean Lupi a little bit, but I thought there was a little bit of value on Ariani at plus 170. I think a big part of the reason that Lupi is favored. Oh yeah, I should pull up those odds and take a peek at them quick while we're doing that. So yeah, currently Carnalosi can be had for plus 159, Lupi minus 165, but she's even as bad as minus 200 in spots. But I think part of the reason that Lupi is favored so highly is because she's a solid wrestler. She will work really hard for takedowns. I think she gets like 4.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. So she's one of those people who has not only the skill to wrestle, but the tenacity and will continue to work for takedowns. And Carnalosi only has 25% takedown defense, which on paper looks bad. But if you look into it, so she's got 25%. She's been taken down 3 times on 4 attempts. Those were all in the what's her name, Naliang. Yeah, those are all in the Naliang fight. And if you remember that fight was absolutely crazy. It was back and forth, constant scrambling. I think part of the reason that Carnalosi was able to be taken down so easily in that fight is simply because it was such a wild fight. She was constantly kind of off balance and out of position because she was swinging hard and coming in hard and that sort of thing. And I would hope that her team has worked on her with that a little bit, and that it wouldn't necessarily be quite that way in a different fight that wasn't playing out so chaotically. And also Lupi tends to she tends to look for her takedowns by clinching up against the cage, looking for a body lock, looking for trips and that sort of thing. And I don't think that's going to be an easy thing to do against, like you mentioned, such a hoss like Carnalosi. I think the way to get Carnalosi down is to properly time like a blast double when she's coming in and is already off balance from throwing strikes. Trying to tie up with her and actually move that body around and take her down that way, I feel like is going to be a little bit of a struggle. So, like skill wise, technique wise, I do think Lupi is probably the better fighter, but I just felt that there was some value on Carnalosi at plus 170, just that I don't know that Lupi's going to be able to get her down. I don't think Carnalosi is necessarily all that good, but it's just that, at some point that horsepower makes a difference. And I just think that Lupi's going to have a hard time controlling her. And, if Carnalosi is able to, hit Lupi with some of those shots she's throwing her way, I don't think Lupi's going to like that too much. And yeah, I'm interested to see how this fight plays out. But I did take that dog shot on Carnalosi.
I love the way you broke that down, man. I didn't even really consider the sort of takedown entries versus approach. I'm really excited for this fight because I feel like it's going to be a tale of of two fights almost. Like it's gonna start off, and a lot of things you said is gonna be very hard for Lupi to have sort of success in any. In my opinion, I think even if Ariani was at plus 140, there's value there because I feel like this is a matchup where if it goes to a decision just stylistically, I feel like that definitely favors Ariani in the first two rounds because she's going to be able to sort of put it on her, keep her at sort of distance. And in my opinion, even though some would argue that Lupi has a better sort of jab and outside striking, I would say Ariani's tenacity is going to sort of negate a lot of that. There's not going to be a lot of room to sort of step off and keep trying to play that game on the outside. So I feel like early on, this is definitely going to be Ariani's fight, especially towards the second half of the second round. That's where things start getting interesting, and that's why I really like this fight because I feel like it's going to be really just an arc. And I love fights like that sort of tell a story as they go on. I think third round Lupi, watch out for that submission. I think maybe even sprinkling on something like a third round finish for Lupi would be a great bet, just because I think that's where the biggest window of opportunity is going to be cardio wise. But as far as like, I agree with what you said as far as skill for skill. Like you would argue that Lupi is more technical in both phases, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. But I would argue the way their styles clash, like that you cannot like I'm so surprised that she's such a big favorite because I feel like you cannot, if both fighters are completely not winded, no cardio issues, I feel like you can't pick against Carnalosi until those things start changing. So it's going to be a tale of two fights. I'm excited to watch it. I'm going to lean Carnalosi on this one. And she doesn't even have to get a finish, in my opinion. It's just a matter of surviving that third round.
And dude, I think Lupi was she's dropped. I think she was at like getting up close to minus 200 at one point. I think she was at like minus 190 or something. Yeah, that's a little crazy, but yeah, it's tightened up a little bit since then.
Yeah, and I don't see a lot of the opportunities to end up in wild scrambles and snatch submissions like she has gotten in a lot of her wins. I don't really see a lot of opportunity for that to happen. Now, don't get me wrong, if they end up on the ground at any point, I feel like Carnalosi does not want to be there and she's trying to get out as fast as she can. But like you said about that last matchup, I also rate Li Niang or Niang. Well, sorry, excuse
Yeah,
me. Whatever her
look,
name is,
I had to look at my
respectfully.
notes.
Yeah, respectfully, whatever her name is, I rate her as a fighter as well. I think there's a lot of accolades there as far as her Olympic caliber sort of weightlifting background, but you could see it was a lot of power there behind those takedowns. So definitely a really cool dynamic that you pointed out. I'm excited to see how this one plays out, and I'm glad that we're both on different sides of the official pick too. Gives me a little something to brag about after. We'll see. So next up, Clayton Rodriguez coming up against CJ Vergara. Now, I'm gonna be extremely real with you on this one. This is the one fight where I have no idea who one person is. And that one person is Clayton Rodriguez. So I will lean on you entirely for any analysis on this fight because I have none. But all I got to say about CJ Vergara is he was an underdog, a big underdog in his Dana White's Contender Series fight, and even in the promo package, like I don't want to make it seem like I knew since day one, but even in the promo package, I was like, man, there's something interesting about this guy. Like no matter what happens, I feel like he's someone to look out for. And then he ended up getting a big upset knockout that got him into the UFC. So big fan of CJ Vergara and what he has to offer, but I'm really excited to hear your breakdown of this fight.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm going to let you know right now, it's not going to be a whole lot. This is another one where I didn't have a super strong read and I didn't dig that deep into it, but let's take a look at the odds here. I know Vergara is a really big underdog. Clayton Rodriguez minus 270. Vergara can be had for plus 250. And I think, that line is pretty wide, and I think it's largely an athleticism gap. Rodriguez is a guy who, from what I was able to see, he's very quick, he's very explosive, he's got really nice striking. Whereas CJ Vergara is, more so one of those guys who, you know, the kind of guy you describe as the dude who shows up with his lunch pail in his hand. You know, he's not necessarily going to blow your hair back. He's not the most skilled guy in the world. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he's just well-rounded and he's just tough. And unless you get him out of there, he's going to be coming at you for 15 minutes. You know, he's one of those kind of guys. So I do think Rodriguez is the more highly touted of the two. He's the guy who people are going to be taking notice of a little bit more. He looked pretty impressive on his Contender Series fight. Yeah, and Vergara looked better in his UFC debut against Ode Osborne than people expected him to, I think. So he is a guy who I think can be, well, kind of like you said too, he's a guy who I think can be a little bit of an overachiever. And so, you know, Rodriguez is a big favorite here, and I can understand why. But if I was going to bet this fight, getting Vergara, a tough guy like that who will fight for your money at big underdog odds like that isn't a bad look, I don't think. So I haven't done anything with this fight. I guess by way of a pick, I'm going to go ahead and go with the big favorite in Clayton Rodriguez. But if I was going to bet it, I'd definitely be looking at the dog.
Nice. I love that analysis, and I agree. I'm just picking CJ because that's what I know. But really good shout. I think he's one of those guys too that like you said, he has deceptive power. That you'll see the strikes that finish people, and you're like, that doesn't look too crazy. But it gets the job done for sure. So, really cool matchup. And I think these first three fights are going to be just fast paced, which is what you love to see to start out a card. Um, this matchup honestly got me a little shook. I feel like this is one that I went back and forth on very often. We got Tracy Cortez coming up against Melissa Gatto. Um, I feel like as far as dynamicism, I always fuck up saying that word. I would say you have to lean Melissa Gatto when it comes to those intangibles. But as far as sort of approach and general sort of stick to itiveness when it comes to game planning, I feel like there's a lot to say about Tracy Cortez's side of things. I think working with Henry Cejudo, we've seen a lot of different people now. It's tried and true. Like that team is a good team. Regardless of how you feel personally about Henry, I feel like that they've really done a lot for a lot of different fighters' careers at this point. So don't sleep on that gym. Um, and that's what made this pick very hard for me because I could see, and I almost wanted to even bet Gato by submission just because they're going to end up in a lot of different uh, grappling scenarios. But at the same time, my official pick, I think I got to go with process over anything else. And for me, that is Tracy Cortez.
Dude, that was honestly, the breakdown you just gave was pretty close to exactly what I would have said if you would have had me go first. So I don't know that I even have much to add, but yeah, exactly what you said. Like, this is one of those fights where I end up looking at it like it's the fighter with the more solid and consistent process versus the fighter who's dangerous and who is an absolute hoss. I mean, Melissa Gatto like shows up in both my dreams and my nightmares, if that makes any sense. I mean, she is terrifying, but in like a charming way. You know, but I mean that's a scary woman. I mean, it really is. But yeah, I think like you said, Tracy Cortez is just she's got a really solid approach. You know, she'll stick to the game plan. She's got, you know, decent boxing. She's comfortable on the feet. She'll come out and look for those takedowns. But yeah, she like when your game plan ends up being I'm going to take Melissa Gatto down and hold her on her back. You know, Sajara Eubanks was able to hold her on her back for quite a while, but she was constantly looking for submissions, constantly being busy. So yeah, it's a fight where I think, you know, Tracy Cortez is probably going to be able to control most of this fight. It could very well be Tracy Cortez controlling for 15 minutes, but Melissa Gatto is going to be dangerous throughout that entire time. So there's always a moment where she can find her moment, whatever it might be. So yeah, it makes for a really exciting and fun fight. And I should pull up the odds here too. This is what same with my full card breakdown. I get halfway through the breakdown and then I'm like, oh yeah, odds. Cortez is favored at minus 150, Gatto at plus 150. And yeah, I'm there's a possibility that I might still take a shot on Melissa Gatto here, be it inside the distance or by submission or something. By way of a pick, I think I am going to pick Tracy Cortez, but I think Melissa Gatto is definitely a live dog here, and I think this is going to be a really fun fight.
Awesome. And something that I forgot to mention too, I feel like you could definitely argue Tracy Cortez has the more UFC fights. But you could argue that Melissa Gatto has the better experience as far as who she's fought and who she was able to
Sure.
win against as well. So yeah, awesome fight. And honestly, after you told me the odds, shit, I might go to the window with that one. I felt like it was going to be closer to 120 or something like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, good spot there if you ask me. But next up, I'm gonna let you start with this one because I'm really intrigued on what's gonna be your opinion on this. Francisco Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts. Can you give us the odds before you go into it, please?
Yeah, just a second. I got my stuff in the wrong order here. I
You
gotta
are all
find.
good.
There it is.
Got some old man MMA, baby.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Trinaldo and Roberts, very very close fight. I'm showing Trinaldo minus 105, Danny Roberts plus 100. It's pretty much a coin flip. Yeah, this is a tough. I mean, I guess the best way to start off is that I agree with that line as far as trying to make a pick on this fight. It is a tough one to feel confident on. Francisco Trinaldo's 43 years old. He's going to be 44 this year, but like it, it's almost a little bit like an Andrei Arlovsky situation in that he's found a way to make it work. He's not necessarily the fighter that he used to be, but he found a way to be a 43-year-old fighter that can still hang in the UFC. He just had to figure out how to make it work. He doesn't. He hangs back. He's pretty low volume. He's definitely like trying not to use up that gas tank. He's not as dangerous as he used to be, but he's still dangerous when he finds his moments. Um, I I guess Danny Roberts, obviously the younger guy, he's going to have the much longer reach. He's going to be quicker. And we have seen Francisco Trinaldo struggle a little bit with getting inside somebody who's got the longer reach. Was it Dwight Grant? Is that the fight I'm thinking of where
Yep.
he was having a hard time? He was having a hard time early with getting inside that reach, and I think we could see that here. I guess you know, I guess I'm leaning toward Danny Roberts, but like I said, I agree with the line. It's super close and it could absolutely go either way. But I think I like Roberts to just be quicker, to just be the younger, faster, more athletic guy who's able to just kind of use his movement and use his reach. I see the fight largely kind of just playing out in the striking and Roberts probably just slightly getting the better of it with just being the longer, quicker guy.
Great shouts. I can't wait to give you my thoughts on this, but I have to say before I even get into it, this is fucking nuts and doesn't make sense to me. And I kind of want to look back at these fights. Francisco Trinaldo has been in the UFC since 2012. That is nuts. Like that's a
Yeah.
10-year career.
Yeah. I think he's
Um,
18-8, if I remember correctly.
yeah, that's a hell of a record too.
Yeah.
And the names on this as well, it's crazy. And like you said, I think that dynamic of sort of length and sticking back stylistically is going to bring a lot of problems in this matchup. I just tend to lean. I just got to say this before I even get into it. Every time I see Francisco Trinaldo, I think of the benchwarmers meme where he's like, he's like, how old are you even? And he's a grown ass man. He's like, I'm 12, and he's like, yeah, 1200. Like what the fuck? I feel like that same thing with Trinaldo. Like if it comes out later that he's actually 47, I'll fucking believe it. Like it makes
Absolutely.
sense. Um, yeah, it's just been I think watching his fights is a real treat because he does a lot of cool things that you won't really expect that sort of jump out to me on tape. I feel like a lot of his intercepting hooks, like really watch for that because I swear he deserves the credit for it. He has a very good eye for counter striking as people are advancing on him, even though that sort of dynamic is also where he ends up getting in trouble. So I feel like this matchup. I agree with you in the fact that initially I'm leaning towards Danny Roberts because of that sort of same process versus dynamicism dynamic. But at the same time, I just feel like this is going to be another one of those fights, another one of those Francisco Trinaldo fights, where he's losing until he wins,
Yeah.
and he gets a big knockout. So that's my call. I'm going Trinaldo on this one.
I hope you're right, man. I'm all about the old man fighters, being an old man not fighter myself. So yeah, I'm all about it.
Awesome. Next up, this is the true match right here. This is the only fight that I think matters the most to Eric on this whole card. We got Blagoy Ivanov coming up against Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I just got to say, shout out to De Lima for making this heavyweight run, because it's been fucking awesome. Like, I hated watching him at light heavyweight. It was a lot of tough, long, drawn out fights. At heavyweight, this man is just no show, all go, baby. I'm really excited for this fight because Blagoy Ivanov is the heavyweight anomaly. He slows everything down and wants to take you to decision. He wants to sort of bring you into those deep waters. Doesn't have that flashy. I mean, he has knockout power. Every heavyweight does, but he's not out there trying to create that finish ASAP. He's someone that sort of picks his spots, put himself in a good position to win, and wouldn't even mind grappling you a little bit if that's what it comes down to. I feel like in this matchup, though, he's going to want to stay away from that. I think this is going to be a lot of sort of staying on the outside and trying to stay out of those blitzes that De Lima is patented and known for at this point in his career. Um, I do see a scenario where De Lima's able to get a quick knockout, but at the same time, that's just a tough ask against for anyone against Blagoy Ivanov. So I'm actually going to be going with Blagoy in this one. I think his process, as well as his, just let's be real, cinder block fucking head. This man has been stabbed. He ain't going out easy, baby. That's all I got to say. So I'm going with Blagoy Ivanov in this one.
Have you looked at the odds for this fight at all?
No, I have not.
Do you care to take a guess?
Ooh, that's a good shout. I would say Blagoy Ivanov minus 140.
Dude, that was wild. Blagoy Ivanov minus 140. Marcos Rogerio de Lima plus 130.
No way.
Damn, dude, that was solid as hell. Yeah. I don't really have much to add to what you said, honestly. Like, one thing I do want to say though, I think Marcos Rogerio de Lima kind of gets a lot of crap. Like, people just kind of talk shit on him as not being very good. And I can see why that happens, but dude, for about 4 minutes, he's good. And I don't just mean like he's powerful, he's dangerous, like you said, all heavyweights are. Dude, he's got solid Muay Thai. He's got nice striking. It just doesn't last very long. But he is, I honestly really enjoy watching Marcos Rogerio de Lima do what he does for about that first 3 minutes. I think he's got beautiful striking for a big guy, honestly. But yeah, it's pretty much like you said, he's pretty much a first rounder bust kind of guy. He's going to be really dangerous early, but Blagoy Ivanov has taken full on flush punches from Derek Lewis and just kept on coming. So it is hard to see Rogerio de Lima getting that finish. And if he doesn't, like you said, Ivanov's one of those guys. It's hard to even break him down stylistically. It's like, what does he do? I don't really know. What is he trying to do? I'm not really sure, but he's there and he's not going anywhere. Like you said, he slows it down. It's hard to get your game going against him. But yeah, he's a guy that I'm like, what is he good at? I don't really know exactly, but he gets in there and he's tough to get rid of. So, but yeah, like, I have to lean Blagoy as well. Obviously we sometimes can like overplay the narrative of somebody having a great chin, because fighters with great chins do get knocked out. Just because you've never been knocked out doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Could very well happen here, but yeah, just from what we've seen, I'm going to lean toward Rogerio de Lima looking good early, probably landing some big shots that are not enough to put Blagoy away. De Lima getting tired, and then Ivanov probably just grinding on him, leaning against the cage, taking him down. And will he find a finish? Maybe. I guess a late ground and pound stoppage wouldn't surprise me here. So yeah, I'll go with Blagoy by like 3rd round stoppage, maybe.
Nice. I like that a lot. And I couldn't have said that better myself. Like, I agree. I didn't know how to best compliment him. And it sounds like I'm being derogatory when I explain his game, but I think it's an attribute. Something this reminded me of, I'm going to do it to you again. A random anime anecdote from my childhood. He reminds me of in Yu-Gi-Oh! This character called Time Wizard, where literally his thing was he'll come onto the field, and as soon as he's there, everything around him just ages. And I feel like that happens in his matchups, where it's like, no, dude, we're not going at your speed anymore. We're slowing this down for real. So yeah, this is going to be this is the piss break fight. I'll be real. But I know that Eric is not going to be moving from his seat.
I love it. Low
Yes,
level
sir.
heavyweights. I'm into it.
Yes, sir. So awesome. We're both going Blago in this one. Next up, now this is where, if you ask me, the card gets insane. Like from this point on, there's no turning back, baby. Make sure you got all your ducks in order. The beer is at the house. There's no turning back from this point on. We got Brandon Royval coming up against Matt Schnell. If you ask me, like inject this shit into my veins right here. This matchup, I'm super pumped for this one. I feel like the sort of book on Brandon Royval is he's just gonna do shit out there, and that's what he's gonna do. But lately, I'm not gonna lie, he has been reining things in a little bit, especially getting behind that jab and working on his sort of speed of delivery. I feel like he's not the fastest guy at flyweight, and that has to do a little bit because of his big frame. But at the same time, I'm really liking the sort of adjustments that he's been making, the sort of bridge the gap against a lot of faster guys in this division. And Matt Schnell is one of those dudes. Like if you ask me, he's up there top 5 in this division as far as hand speed and just getting those punches back and forward. Like a lot of people don't count that as well. I think it's not just getting the punches out there, it's bringing them back so now you could defend yourself too. And I think that's one of his big strengths in this matchup as well. This is a tough one for me to sort of make a definitive pick on, because I feel like when it comes to the upper bound limits of Matt Schnell's skill, I feel like you when the best version of him is out there, you gotta pick him, especially in a matchup like this with a guy that's super wild. I feel like he's able to negate those guys in this division a little bit more because of his slick boxing. But at the same time, I feel like that big big power in random spaces is what's going to end up sort of pulling it out for Brandon Royval. I'm super excited for this one. I feel like this could be really like in contention for fight of the night. That's how fun this fight is going to be. But I tend to lean towards Brandon Royval, either second or third round stoppage. And I would imagine it starts with a big shot and ends with the submission. So that's my pick there. If you wanna tail that.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the tweet I made yesterday that was like me watching tape on a flyweight fight. Oh, this guy's fast. This guy's got fast hands. Oh, that was a fast takedown entry. Oh, his footwork is pretty fast. Like this is the fight I was doing tape on when I said that, because I realized that, like, I'm watching the tape, I'm trying to notice stylistic tendencies and technical tendencies and stuff. And I realized that, I don't know if that's why I like heavyweight and light heavyweight, is like it's just a lot easier to pick those things out when people aren't moving so quickly. So I realized while I was taking notes on this fight, I was like, all I'm doing is typing that these guys are fast over and over again. It's like it's going too fast for my old ass to even pick up on what's going on. So, but yeah, I lean toward odds here. Do you care to take a guess, or do you want me to just throw
Yes, yes, I would love that. Let's just make that a fixture for the rest of the show, by the way.
Okay.
Call me crazy for this, but I'm doing it. Matt Schnell minus 120.
No, it's actually Royval is actually a big favorite here. Wow. Royval is minus 240, Matt Schnell plus 240.
That's surprising. Go to the window with that, if you ask me.
Yeah. And this is a fight where I came away from it not feeling like I had a super strong read on how it would play out, because like I said, my notes were just like, he's got fast hands, he's got really fast hands too, and whatever. And I ended up I think I ended up going with a pick. I think I ended up leaning toward you said Royval, kind of a club and sub kind of thing, right? Is that what you were thinking? I think that's kind of what I came away from too. I'm looking through my notes here because I can't remember what I decided on exactly. I have 16 pages of tape study notes on these fights, so I'm always like trying to
more than a page each, baby.
Yeah, I'm like, what the heck did I actually say about this fight? But yeah, I think that's what I ended up making my line at about Royval minus 200, so I guess I was kind of not too far off from where it ended up being. But yeah, I do lean Royval to win here. I was also thinking probably a late sub. I'm going to say Royval sub in round 2 or 3 probably.
And I feel like that line is definitely influenced by sort of their most recent fights. Like I feel like if you're considering just full body of work, and I get why you can't, especially with someone that's let me just say it, a little chinny in Match Snell. But at the same time, I don't know. I think that's way closer than that is suggesting. But exciting fight nonetheless. I'm super pumped for that one.
This is dumb, but another random thing I noticed about Matt Schnell while I was doing tape study is that, and if you've never noticed this before, now when you watch him fight, you'll notice it. He's always got a look on his face, like he's really confused, or like he's got it when he's in there. He's like kind of like he's questioning, almost like you just said something and he's trying to figure out if you're bullshitting him or not. That's what Matt Schnell looks like the whole time he's in the ring. So you'll never be able to forget that now that I've mentioned it.
And that's a great shout because hey, we do got to figure out if you are bullshitting in the ring. It makes a lot of sense. That's hilarious. Now I got to keep an eye out for that.
Yep.
But next up, Macy Chiasson versus Norma Dumont. Let's do the line game, baby.
Okay.
I would go Macy at -130.
Norma Dumont, big favorite at -220.
Really?
Macy
Really?
at +200.
Wow. See, it was dumb luck. I'm not as good as this people think. Please give us
I
your
think it's
analysis.
brave that you're willing to do this because I spend a lot of time on this betting stuff, and I think I would not, unless I had just done the tape study, I would not be able to come up with a line very well. So I think you're doing great. You want to kick this one off, or you want me to?
Yes, please take us.
And okay, I get the line that you just guessed is actually a good way to jump off of this fight, I think, because you were expecting Chiasson to be a small favorite. I think I haven't bet Chiasson here, but I do think that there's probably pretty good value on her here. I do think I probably lean Dumont to win, but not as big of a favorite as she is. Um, I kind of see it as Norma Dumont is kind of, excuse me, she's the kind of striker that she's very efficient, and I think she only does what she needs to do to win. I think she fights to the level of her competition a little bit. Like if you make her work for it, she will work for it. But if you don't make her work for it, she's just going to pump that jab out there. And if that's all she needs to do, that's all she's going to do. I think that's the kind of fighter that she is. And I'm not trying to say that in a disparaging way. It's smart. It's efficient. That's just the kind of fighter she is. And, Macy Chiasson she's big. She's athletic. Her skills are coming along. She can be a little bit wild, but not in a bad way. I think she's got a nice clinch game. Like I like her knees and elbows in the clinch. And I think that Chiasson is going to bring the kind of game that's going to make Norma Dumont work a little bit harder. I don't think Chiasson is going to, if you allow Norma Dumont to just stay at range and pump her jab out there and have the fight that she wants to have, she'll just pick you apart and keep it simple. I don't think Chiasson is going to allow her to have that kind of fight. I kind of think this fight's going to end up playing out with a lot of cage pushing. Personally, I think they're going to end up clinching and cage pushing a lot. I mean, Dumont is obviously a big, strong fighter as well. Chiasson has a really big frame. I think she's probably kind of tough to work with in those kind of situations. So, I don't really know who I favor or lean necessarily. If it does end up playing out in the clinch, Chiasson's pretty good there. I guess I'm gonna. Yeah, shit. I don't know. This is what some of these fights I'm gonna end up making my pick. Like after now, I want to wait. I want to wait for you to talk about it and hear your side before I make my pick. But that's not how this works. You know what? I'm gonna pick Macy. I actually am gonna pick Macy. I haven't bet her yet, but I might because I have heard some people really solid on Dumont. I've heard people that are like, this fight is Dumont all day, but I haven't heard their breakdown as to why they feel that way because I don't think you can feel super confident in Dumont here. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it was so funny that you switched on me like that because I just wrote in Norma Dumont and then you just flipped it off, so I had to go change it. Yeah, the reason why I think Macy should be a favorite in this one is because of exactly what you just said. I feel like they're gonna end up in a dynamic where they end up clinched up often, and I feel like something that we saw. I'm doing it again. I'm forgetting it. I'm forgetting a name of a women's featherweight who recently retired. The one that split open Cyborg with the elbow. Felicia Spencer. in
There you
that
go.
matchup specifically, I feel like I was surprised with how well she was able to do on the fence, specifically defensively, because she was able to prevent a couple takedowns before they got bad. So that dynamic for Norma Dumont, it makes me feel like, I don't know how well Macy's going to be able to do in those ranges. But at the same time, I feel like there's a big physicality edge. I think if there's the biggest thing to find out is weigh-in day. If there's no issues with the weight cut, I feel like that's a much safer pick to make on Macy. I feel like the power in the strikes is gonna lead to that dynamic that you just talked about, where she ends up getting tagged and then trying to stay as far away from that as possible and sort of trying to pump that jab out and do that process oriented, just keep me away, please. Game plan, which I think works very well, especially against someone that's trying to take your head off for parts of the bout, but also has some suspect sort of gas tank issues that we've seen come to play in a lot of her fights as well. So this is one of those matchups where I would say it's hard to to come away with either of these ladies feeling like 100% they're going to be the one that's going to win. But ultimately, I feel like I'm my Macy pick is leaning a bit more towards sort of potential and overall sort of career trajectory. So that's where I'm going with this one. But yeah, it's a tough one, and the Aspen Lad fight does not help you gauge the situation in this one
No.
either, because it was exactly what you were mentioning earlier. So I would say Norma Dumont has been someone that has frustrated me because of the dynamics you talked about. I feel like her skills say that she should be able to win a lot of these fights way more dominantly than she has. But at the same time, you can't really get mad for people going with the path with least resistance. So I'm picking Macy here, but either way, I really won't be surprised.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at that, she can be had as high as plus 200. I don't know what she is on the books that I have specifically, but I might have to take a shot on that because yeah, this is the kind of fight that I line it much more closely, and I think either way, either fighter being at a number like plus 200 is worth the bet here because I think that it should be lined a lot closer than that. So yeah, I might have to. I mean, I took a shot on Carnalosi at plus 170. I can take a shot on Chase on a plus 200, right?
Heck yeah. Especially if you could get that before weigh-ins, because I don't know. I feel like the weigh-in story, if we got any issues, automatically just forget about that bet for sure.
Mhm.
So this next one, I already know I'm gonna struggle on this line matchup because it's probably gonna be the hype number. But Randy Brown versus Chaos Williams. I am freaking pumped, and I'm gonna start my analysis on this one. But let's do the game. Why not? I would say Chaos Williams minus 110.
Nailed it.
No
Chaos
way.
Williams minus 1 ton, Randy Brown plus 112.
Let's go. That's two now. I got exactly on the head.
You
I
did.
would I wouldn't have thought I would have got one. But this matchup is super fun for me. And I like the fact that Randy Brown is an underdog here. I feel like this is another one of those matchups where it comes down to can you land before you get drowned. I feel like Chaos Williams has scary power that travels throughout the rounds. We saw that in the Miguel Baeza fight. His I can never really confidently go into a fight saying, yeah, Chaos Williams is going to 100% win this. Because I feel like even when he's having success and doing his thing out there, there's still a little bit of sort of uncertainty in his game. Like, yeah, he has all the horsepower to go out there and knock anybody out. But at the same time, I feel like there's times in bouts where pe- people start putting the pressure on him, and then he starts throwing like extremely wild, like almost just get the fuck away from me. Like you could kind of see it on his face, like don't make me do it. And I feel like that dynamic in this matchup specifically is gonna set him back a couple steps. I feel like Randy Brown has really good range techniques with front kicks as well as lower leg kicks, and can really sort of pepper Chaos Williams and get him to sort of start forcing reactions out of him, whether it's pumping the jab and then switching things up. I just feel like this is going to be a matchup where he's sort of a step behind, and at some point he's gonna touch Randy Brown and make it close again. But I feel like if he's able to avoid the big steam off those shots, I think this is Randy Brown's fight all day.
Yeah, I feel very similarly. I actually this fight and the Trinaldo Danny Roberts fight, I keep like in the same way that there are fighters that you like mix up. I keep mixing up those two matchups in my head because the dynamic is kind of similar to me. You know, I mean, Chaos Williams has that death touch. I mean, not Trinaldo has definitely shown power, but not not quite that death touch level. But I kind of see this the same way that like yeah, it's more of Randy Brown is going to have the better process, is probably going to land more volume, is going to have the better movement and that kind of thing. But Chaos Williams, that power is there. He carries it through the whole fight. The danger is always there. But yeah, I feel very similar to how you broke it down. It's the Chaos it needs to catch lightning in a bottle with that one shot, whereas Randy Brown is gonna, if he's not able to find that, I expect Randy Brown will probably a decision. I'm thinking. I mean, could Randy Brown potentially find one of those situations where he's able to just overwhelm him with shots, probably not even drop him, but like overwhelm him with shots against the cage for a standing TKO or something, maybe, but I don't think that's super likely. But yeah, my lean here is Randy Brown by decision.
Yeah, that'll be huge. And in his last fight, I feel like if there's anyone, the MMA and the UFC specifically is horrible at doing stuff like this. I feel like, and this is a random tangent, which I'd love to go off with you, just sort of get
Yeah.
some. I got a couple questions too, so this is going to be great. The UFC needs to do like an all-star weekend where they have like these events that are for the fans, where fighters could sort of compete in a way that isn't fighting against one another, and like random competitions or things to show off things that are sort of applicable in MMA. I feel like when it comes to the reason why I brought that up is because I feel like Randy Brown, if there was a UFC's most improved fighter, like he's getting that award. Like he is that guy.
That's a
He's
great
stuck.
point.
He stuck through it, and I feel like in his last fight specifically, just the process on the feet. I think he even landed a front kick to the chin, like right on the chin. I just feel like he has really grown into his own in the striking phases where he's able to find people right at that edge. I feel like that's something that I didn't understand until I started actually throwing some punches my damn self. There is a difference as far as ranges. Even if you have the sort of length on someone, there's a difference to what is the range that your punch has versus the effective range of that punch. And I feel like Randy Brown has been gotten just so good at finding that exact sweet spot for his kicks and his punches in a way that wasn't there early on in his UFC career. So that sort of growth has been really fun to watch from him specifically. If there was a MMA All Star event, All Star weekend, what kind of events would you want to see, man?
Oh man, give me an example of what you're thinking. Do you have like
For
one in
sure.
mind?
So like a perfect example in NBA, they have what's called the skills challenge. So like they'll go and they'll throw a pass through a hole. So it's like a bounce pass.
Oh
You got to get
sure.
it right through the hole. So something that I think would be cool is like those walls with like they have a whole bunch of lights and then they light up and you got to like quickly go across, like something like that, but with sort of punches or kicks where they gotta get the as soon as it lights up, you got to get the strike as fast as possible or something like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't. I love this idea. Now I'm trying to think if I have any cool ideas for it. I'd probably have to think about it. But no, that's a great idea because it's also an opportunity to obviously they do things like the Fan Expo. They're doing UFC X this year, a big expo. Like the first time I ever traveled to Vegas before I moved here, it was in 2010 for the Fan Expo. And it was a blast. Like it's super cool to you get to talk to some fighters and get autographs and stuff like that. But yeah, you're not really like it would be a really good way. People complain that the UFC doesn't do a great job of building up their stars and finding ways to help the fans to connect with these people. But that would be a really great way to do it, to actually see them taking part in different things, like humanizing them in a way, not just like, oh, they're sitting behind a table signing autographs, but yeah, having them actually taking part in things like that and watching them kind of do things and interact with people. I think that would be really good for building up stars and making fans feel more connected to them too. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
It's an
That's funny
awesome
that you
show.
mentioned that pushing buttons thing, because I just did that yesterday. We went to this arcade in town and we played that game just yesterday.
That's
I
hilarious.
remember seeing years ago. I don't know if any fighters still do it, but I remember seeing years ago fighters using like a version of that for training, even
Mhm.
where they're hitting lights and that sort of thing. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. What are some other? Do you have any other ones? You
Yeah,
can think
I was just thinking about one just now. Ali Quinta has been a big proponent of that specific training.
Okay.
But one event that I thought of, um, I know you probably seen this video where Conor McGregor is sitting and he has a candle on the counter. Shout out, please show the people, please. It's only right. We got the candles on deck, baby. But Conor McGregor has some candles on the counter. Yes, beautiful. He has some candles on the counter and he like throws a left hand, but like from like he obviously isn't punching the damn candle, but he'll get the candle to go out from just the force of that punch. And like every time you do it, like they'll bring in another candle and light it up each time, and then see who could get the most from one strike. And you could throw whatever strike you want. So like the last one where you have like four candles lined up, people are throwing like a spinning hook kick or something and hoping that all of those turn out. I don't know. That's such a random idea, but it just came to my head while you were talking.
And of course the uh the punching bag machine, the like arcade machine where you hit the punching bag. They I've seen videos of fighters hitting those before. There was a video years ago of Pat Barry doing like a spinning wheel kick into one of those. And one of the I can't remember if it was at T-Mobile. I think it was at T-Mobile, but there was a UFC event I went to where they had one of those machines out, and it was a contest. It was actually for fans, like whoever was wandering by, and they were keeping track, and there was a prize, I think, but yeah, they were like keeping track of the top 5 scores on it or whatever. But yeah, that whole thing is a great idea, like a fan expo, but a fan expo in which fighters compete with each other in various ways to just kind of humanize them a little more. And I think that's a great idea.
For sure. And the martial arts related, but still, like I feel like that environment would be cool to see the fighters interact too, because I feel like it's always this life or death scenario when it comes to the fight week. So really, it's take a step back from that and actually see guys be friendly to each other would be surprising. So
And it doesn't even have to be martial arts related. Remember Tough One? They can pick up their coaches on a chair and carry them. That was one of the big complaints about Tough One. That's why they didn't do that in future seasons, is that people were like, why are these fighters' futures being somewhat decided by them taking part in challenges that have absolutely nothing to do with how good they are at fighting, which I think is a pretty fair complaint.
hey, it's reality TV, baby. You got to
Right,
get whatever
yeah.
you can. Yeah, that's so true. Literally, just have a random cornhole competition between
Right.
all the UFC fighters that are willing to participate. Hilarious. But yeah, that's my spiel. They got to do it at some point. They got to do it because and give out those awards too. Like obviously there's not an official like UFC. I mean, they do videos every year, but it's not like an award ceremony. Like they should have like a MVP of the UFC, or six man of the year, someone that came out of nowhere that nobody was expecting. I don't know. That's just the sports fan in me trying to make everything applicable to MMA. But
They do the World MMA Awards, but it's not done by the UFC specifically. I'm not actually sure who does it. I was gonna go to it. They do it in Vegas here, but um yeah, the last 2 years, I think maybe they canceled it in 2020, and then in 2021, fans couldn't go. They did it, but you couldn't go. But it is something
yeah,
I want to go check out one of these years if they do it again.
you would think fans would be the reason why they're doing the damn thing, literally. So that's questionable. Random side note, um, another one of these events that they could do, like how long people could hold their breath underwater. I feel like that's applicable. Like
Yeah,
that's an applicable skill. Why not? Super random. Anyway, this tangent has gone on far too long. Um, our next bout on UFC 274, Andre Fiallo coming up against Cameron Van Camp. I was surprised when I saw this fight was even a thing. Like, how many weeks ago did he fight now? It was like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
and did you hear about why he's allegedly fighting again so quickly?
No, I did not.
I guess Fialho. I can't even remember where I heard this, but Andre Fialho apparently like pulled Dana aside and specifically told him, one thing that I know about myself is I have to fight regularly. Like I've learned that he's like, I literally need to fight as often as I can. He's like, if I can fight 5 or 6 times a year, he's like, I promise you the performance that you got out of me against Baeza, was that who he just fought?
Mhm.
He's like, I promise that the performance you got out of me in the Baeza fight, you're gonna see that every time if you let me fight like every couple months. He's like, I feel like I just don't have it when I don't fight regularly. So
Mm.
Dana was like, all right, well, we'll throw you right back in. So apparently that's what he wants to do all the time. So I guess that's why that happened. So
That's a great
kind of an,
shout. Like,
yeah,
I feel like
interesting little side note.
there's a lot of people that are like that too. I feel like early on in Tony Ferguson's career, I feel like he could have been one of those guys too. That sort of just run me out there and we'll make it happen. Yeah, that's fun. That's awesome. I didn't know that at all. But before we go into our analysis, Andre Fiallo minus 240. That's my guess.
Oh, let me find it. He's a bigger favorite than that even. Um, minus 320.
Nice,
Cameron
nice.
Van Camp plus 300. He's even as high as minus 400 in spots.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not gonna lie, the tape agrees. Tough, tough matchup. I just gotta say, tough matchup. I don't know if this was. I mean, obviously, you just said the reason why he got the bout, but it's just like, damn, that you couldn't find anyone else that was trying to fight in this time frame. Damn, that getting thrown to the wolves for sure. But I just gotta say, I hope for Fialo's sake that this is a quick finish, because I feel like it's not a stylistic thing that this could be a issue if he ends up in the later rounds. It's not even that. It's just sort of you had such a great performance against someone that was so highly regarded, that now you're fighting someone that's unheralded, and now this is sort of expected of you, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to live up to those expectations. So for his sake, I definitely am saying I hope that it is a quick night of work. But just stylistically, from what I've seen, I just feel like, I mean, there's probably some value on sprinkling even in the first, second, and third round on Fialo knockout, just because how hittable I think Van Camp is. I think Fialo is a monster, dude, and I love talking about him because I've been a fan of his for a long time now. Um, I just feel like he stays so rooted in his stance that there's a lot of guys in that division specifically that could exploit that part of his game. But in this matchup, it's just going to lead to a lot more power strikes being landed in his favor. So I'm 100% going with Fialo in this one, probably by knockout, and not even TKO, by knockout.
You did watch some tape on Cameron Van Camp?
Yes, I did.
He's I mean, I came away from the tape thinking, you know, sometimes you just think a fighter, like I like to give the UFC the benefit of the doubt because for the most part they do know what they're doing, and I feel like when they're bringing somebody in, there's always a reason. I don't think Cameron Van Camp looks like he belongs in the UFC
I
at
agree.
all. He has a decent record, but he's one of those guys who's, yeah, he's going in there and blowing dudes out of the water in the first round, but they're not anybody who's any good. And yeah, even I only watched 2 or 3 of his fights, and they were all over quickly. So I mean, I only watched a few minutes of footage on him, but like you said, even that couple minutes of footage is enough to pick up on some pretty serious deficiencies in his game that make me think that he probably doesn't belong here and is probably in big trouble. I don't know if you saw my tweet about that. I said, I only watched a couple of Cameron Van Camp's fights. Do I need to watch any more? He's in big trouble, right? Like that was just kind of, and it looks like the guy's got some grappling, but he definitely he comes forward with his chin straight up in the air and his arms down. I mean, maybe he's not going to do that. Maybe he's going to understand that he needs to not do that here. But yeah, I didn't see anything in the tape that made me think that Cameron Van Camp is going to be ready for this and is going to be able to have any success here. And obviously, Fialio's a striker. He's not known as a grappler, but I mean, at this level, everybody's got serviceable enough defensive wrestling. And yeah, I don't think. I don't think Cameron Van Camp gets out of the first round anyway. Maybe he could potentially find some success with grappling if the fight goes late, but I really doubt it. But yeah, I bet Fialio's money line straight up, even at the like minus 320 or whatever. And I do want to say this. Part of the reason I did that, Dan Levy, I the name of his podcast is escaping me right now, but is he
Powerful part of the Bald Head Club. I just gotta say.
Yeah. He's best
Dan's
fight
MMA picks or something like that. Yeah.
He's best fight picks, I think. I don't know. It's not like Dan is listening, but my apologies, Dan, if I'm wrong on it. Best fight picks, I think, is what he is on Twitter. But anyway, I heard Dan on, I think he was on Die Hard MMA podcast this week. He said he's familiar with Cameron Van Camp. Cameron Van Camp is from the same area as Dan, and Dan kind of saw him come up through the regional scene there. And Dan said, he said Cameron Van Camp does not belong in the UFC, and there is still plenty of value on Andre Fialho at -320. So a guy with inside info said the same thing that we were already thinking. So he's like, the line should be wider than that. Cameron Van Camp does not belong here. So there's a little bit of inside info, I guess. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add there. Should be Fialho. We've seen crazier things happen, but should be Fialho pretty easily, probably by knockout in the first round.
And the thing that really jumped out to me is, like you said, even when he's winning and knocking dudes out, you're like, oh, I don't know if that's transferable at all.
Right,
especially against someone like Andre Fialho in your first fight. Like, that's just tough.
Well, right. And sometimes when you see those guys who've been just feasting on cans, they still look good in those fights. And so, you have a hunch that they're maybe not ready for that level, and they may look a little different in the UFC, but they at least look good in those fights. And I would say that the footage I saw on Cameron Van Camp, even though he was coming out and taking people out quickly, he didn't even look particularly good doing it, So there definitely some concerns there.
For sure. So I'm not going to lie. I've been dreading this. We've got to the point of the card where the pain begins to set in, for me at least. And there's a fighter on this card. I won't get into it because we're not there yet, but literally is the reason why I decided I cannot with fandom anymore. I can't. I kind of got to just let that go. And I'm a fan of everyone. Let me make that clear. But there was, especially when I first started watching, I feel like there was a lot of guys that like I just grew so attached to. And one of those guys is Donald Cerrone, coming up against Joe Lozon, another fan favorite as well. The first fight that I saw from Donald Cerrone's career took place in 2015, and he ended up winning by decision. And it was a dominant as hell fight against an up-and-comer that everyone was saying is the next best thing at 155 pounds. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot like I always do. Can you give me a guess on who you thought that was? This took place, let me get you the event, just so that I could, UFC 182 in 2015. Say a random lightweight fighter's name.
I was looking something up. I missed part of what you said there. What am I guessing again?
Oh yeah, you're good. I was saying the first fight that I saw in Donald Cerrone's career that made me a huge fan.
Oh, okay.
Was in 2015. He got a win at UFC 182 against an up-and-coming lightweight who everyone was touting as sort of the next big thing at 155.
2015. God, I don't know. I'm so bad at these. I'm one of those.
He's no longer in the UFC.
Totally blank. Oh, he was somebody that was like highly touted, but isn't around anymore. Is there any way that you can give me another hint without giving it away? I'm coming up blank right now.
I got you right now. I'm gonna pull up their, just so that I have a reference here. I'm gonna pull up their Sherdog page. Okay, this is perfect. So they have been in Bellator for their last 4 fights, and they have gone 2-2 in their time in Bellator.
Damn.
And when they signed him, also a highly touted signing, where there was like, we got this guy, and hype about it, and ended up losing first out the gate, winning 2, and then just lost his last fight.
This is going to be one of those that when you tell me, I'm going to kick myself because I'm going to be like, I should have known that. I'm trying to think of who's in Bellator lightweight right now. I don't know.
Last one. He has losses to Charles Oliveira, Chad Mendes, Andre Fili, and then in Bellator, Benson Henderson. That's a murderer's row right there. Let me be clear about
damn.
that.
I just watched. I can't.
I got you. It's all good. I won't put you through the pain any longer. Miles Jury.
Oh, okay,
That
okay.
that was one hell of a fight too. And what really made me a fan was there was times in this fight where Miles Jury ended up on the ground and Cerrone just started throwing the nastiest leg kicks at him while on the ground, just disdainful, like just throwing everything into it and like big fuck you kicks, fuck you energy on those kicks. And the reason why I brought that up is because it's just been so painful, man. It's been so hard to see the decline of Donald Cerrone. And I'm 100% sadness hedging here. And let me explain what that means for those who don't know. Sometimes you love a fighter, right? And you know, you know, more than likely they're probably gonna lose because of their tendencies in a certain matchup. So immediately, I'm just saying they're gonna lose, so that when they have any remote level of success, I can actually be happy about it. I'm not expecting them to win. I'm not picking him in this fight. I'm picking Joe Lozon, even though he's the underdog. Um, but I just feel like this stylistic matchup is so hard at this stage of Cerrone's career. He's just been getting blown out of there early on in fights. And Joe Lozon is someone that it doesn't matter if it's UFC 130 or UFC 200, he's putting it on you in that first round. And good luck surviving it. So I feel like this is really just a styles make fights scenario. And if this fight were to happen 5 years ago, 4 years ago, even, like, there's no question who you're picking.
Mm-hmm.
But just because it's so, I find it so fascinating too how two guys who've been in the UFC for such a long time, almost parallel to each other, you almost question like, damn, these guys haven't fought already, and they're at two different stages of their career, even though they're both in the latter ends of their career. I feel like we have not seen the same decline from Joe Lozon that we've seen in Donald Cerrone, and I wonder what that is. There has to be something to that, but obviously it's a case to case basis, and who knows? Maybe it has to do with the preparation in the gym, as far as how much you leave in the gym. But I would imagine Cerrone is one of those guys too, like we talked about earlier, that wants to be in competition, wants to be around that. And because of the sort of devastating nature to his fights lately, he has not been able to do that at all. It's been very long breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that helps him. I don't think that helps him get out of that rut that he always finds himself in the first round. So I'm going with Joe Lozon here. It is a sadness hedge if you ever heard one. And before you go, I forgot to guess the lines.
Oh yeah.
But there's no way, in my opinion, that Joe Lozon's the favorite. So I'm going Cerrone minus 125.
I don't see it. Sometimes they put it in the sometimes they put it in the wrong spot. Let me pull it up on my William Hill. I got my William Hill open anyway.
Nice.
Oh, I want to say, yeah, you mentioned that it's crazy that these guys haven't fought before. Yeah, if you would have asked me, have Donald Cerrone and Joe Lozon fought before, I would have been like, yeah,
100%.
I mean, I don't remember that happening, but sure, yeah, I'm sure they have, like, and I also wanted to mention that, so Cerrone is minus 180, Lozon plus 160.
Wow.
What was your
Much
guess
wider.
again?
Minus 125, Cerrone.
I wanted to mention that. Yeah, you mentioned that Cerrone and Miles Jury. Weirdly enough, I remember that event. I specifically remember I had just started working with a personal trainer, and he ended up being a UFC fan, and I didn't really have any friends that were UFC fans, and he invited me over to watch the UFC with him, and that was the first time that happened. So I specifically remember like going over to his apartment and watching that fight. So that's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean I don't really have much to add as far as how you broke it down. Like stylistically, Cerrone tends to be such a slow starter. He has a really hard time getting anything going in round one. And Joe Lozon is a little bit the opposite. He has a real easy time getting something going in round one, but sometimes he gets a little too much going in round one, and then he has a hard time getting anything going after that, assuming his opponent is still around. I actually did put a little sprinkle on Lozon by, I can't remember if it was just Lozon. No, it was Lozon by KO in round one, which I think I got at plus 700. I do think that's a pretty likely outcome here. I mean, just because of how they break down stylistically, it's you know, I never want to oversimplify, but this is either Joe Lozon in round one or Cerrone wins it, probably, if it doesn't happen that way, right? I mean, is that kind of how you're seeing it? It's
For
pretty
sure.
like, I don't want to make it that black and white, but that's almost what it is. But yeah, and you know, I saw some people saying, I saw someone like complaining on Twitter, like, seriously, look at this card. Like, half the people on this card should be retired. Like they were saying that as though that's a bad thing. The funny thing is, like, you know, I've been an MMA fan for so long that I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. Dude, I bought that what was it called, Bad Boy Promotion MMA or whatever. I bought that pay-per-view when Tito fought Chuck in like 2018. Like that's a car crash of a fight, but I can't not watch that because it's the dudes that I grew up watching, you know, and like when Tito fought Stephan Bonner, was that in Bellator? I can't even remember.
I
But when
think it
Tito fought
was. Yep,
Stephan
with the
Bonner,
fucking
yeah,
mask. Yeah.
I was like super excited for that fight. Like the fights that, because you know Bellator is all about like, we don't care. Like, yeah, the guys who retired after the, come on over, we don't care, you know. And then people, you know, MMA,
56. Let's
yeah,
go.
fans are always complaining about those spots. Of like, oh my god, I don't want to watch these guys go at it. And the thing is, I do, because it's so nostalgic for me, you know. So like, even if it is like past the point where they should probably be fighting, I still get excited about that. I paid money for that Tito versus Chuck Bad Boy pay-per-view. Like, does that mean I have a problem? It might, but I did. I paid for that pay-per-view.
I love how ingrained MMA is, well, for both of us at this point, because Bad Boy has been a long time sponsor. It was actually a Golden Boy promoted event, so
Golden
that's
Boy,
that's
there
where
you
you
go, there
get
you
it
go.
from. Shout out to Darren Wynn. He was also on that fight card. I forgot
Yeah,
who he fought. I
he
think
fought Tom Lawler.
Oh, Tom Lawler. It
Yeah.
was a T name. Yeah, and it was like, how the hell is he gonna win this fight? Just such a big size difference. But that's a good shout. I agree with that. I think it's not a matter of like these guys shouldn't fight; they don't deserve to fight. If that's not a decision anyone should have a part in, but them and their families. Like that is their decision. That is, I cannot say anything about that. Why would I tell them to not make money? But at the same time, it does feel, it's not like it feels dirty, like, oh, I'm watching something that I shouldn't be watching. But it feels like, fuck, man, we're doing this still. Like,
Yeah.
especially in Cerrone's case. I'm just glad that this is, compared to his last five, this is a little bit of a step back. But when you're getting finished by guys like Alex Morono, respectfully, I really like Alex Morono as a fighter as well. But just the peak of who Cerrone was, it's just been a huge fall from grace since then.
Yeah, yeah, and and I think, you know, with that, like you were talking about, like not really feeling like dirty, not wanting to make the decision that like a fighter shouldn't be doing this anymore or whatever. But I think for a lot of fans, it's like it's just the idea that this is not going to be a high quality fight, you know. And the thing is, as evidenced by the fact that I'm a huge fan of heavyweight MMA, that clearly is not a big criteria for me in deciding whether I'm excited to watch a fight. Like, yeah, when Chuck and Tito fought in that Golden Boy thing, I knew that wasn't going to be a high quality MMA fight, but the nostalgia factor is there for me, and I got to watch that. So yeah, like, even though, you know, Cerrone and Lozon, and then another matchup we'll be talking about in a minute here, like, yeah, well past their prime, probably not going to be high quality MMA skill wise, but I'm here for it, as the kids say.
Yeah, it does hurt my soul that Tito Ortiz has a knockout victory over Chuck Liddell.
Right.
But I will admit, I was fucking grinning ear to ear when I saw it, because I was like, this is chaos, dude. Like, if that's another one of those moments, and we have so many of them in MMA. But just one of those moments where if I told you that X amount of years ago, you're like, no fucking way that happens.
Right.
Like, there's no way that happens. And of course, if you last just long enough, you too can knock out someone that's knocked out you twice in the UFC. But anyway,
But
I really like the
universe,
way. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the universe took that one back though when Tito boxed Anderson Silva. The
Oh
universe
man,
went ahead and took that one back for us. So that was another one for the good guys.
and that was just so sweet. That was just so sweet.
Yeah,
That
it was
combination was
awesome.
beautiful too. But I was gonna say, I really like the way you broke that one down, because I totally left that out. I was just 100% sadness hedging. I agree. I think so once Cerrone gets involved and is settled into the fight, he's a great fighter. Like, he's still that guy. He has very good reactive takedowns. And I think in this matchup specifically, after Joe Lozon sort of lets all that steam out in round one and in the first half of round two, I think that's a great path to victory. If you ask me, ground and pound, take them down, and rinse and repeat. I think that that's a real good shout there as far as how it goes later on. But I just feel like at this point, if you're getting put out by Alex Morono, it's hard to imagine you having a huge moment here, even against someone that's sort of your contemporary age wise. But it's just so weird even saying that, because like I said years ago, you wouldn't put Joe Lozon and Donald Cerrone in the same category, except for these guys are action fighters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that took a lot more of our time than I anticipated. Next up,
I thought of more things I wanted to say about this fight, and I just decided not to do it because we've already talked about it up. Yeah.
I love it though. I love it. It speaks to the fandom for sure. Next up, another matchup that you could argue probably shouldn't be fucking happening. Mauricio Shogun Hua going up against Oven St. Preux. This is the rematch of course, the infamous skateboard knockout that at this point has been shared thousands, millions of times. It's so funny. I saw someone tweet, I forgot exactly who it was, but they're like, it's such a shame that the UFC allowed a skateboard in the octagon the first time they fought. And I'm like, yeah, it's just a part of the lore at this point. But this is a matchup, and this doesn't happen often. But this is like, who in the fuck was asking for this? Like,
Yeah.
please explain. I love Shogun. I love late career Shogun. I think he doesn't get enough credit for how he sort of redefined his game. For someone that was such a dynamic striker early on in their career, to realize, hey, I'm not at that point anymore, but I could still get big wins by process in this division. It has been really cool to see. I think him as an underdog, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have cashed on Shogun as an underdog in the last couple of years. But at the same time, this is a matchup where honestly I can't even see a path to victory, given how the first fight went. I mean, you could argue that Ovens has been on a big decline as well, but at the same time, athletically, it's just a different world. It's really a different world, and size too. Like, Shogun has always been a small light heavyweight. OSP has fought at heavyweight a lot for a reason. So just a tough matchup, and it's like, why you got to send our boy out there to get cooked like this? That's how I feel. I'm definitely picking OSP and probably buy some violent, sad stuff.
You want to take a guess on the odds here?
Oh yes, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
Um, can't be too wide. I would say OSP minus 210.
Damn close. OSP minus 230. Who
Nice.
plus 210. Yeah, the way you broke that down, you pretty much pointed to the same things I was going to point to in that. I mean, Mauricio Hua was, I mean, Shogun was never a particularly athletic guy. You know, I mean, he wasn't a guy who was born to be an athlete. He was a guy who learned the skills and made it work for him, you know. And then and OSP is a guy who, he's a great example of a fighter who, I was going to say this about Randy Brown earlier, but then it slipped. When you were talking about how much Randy Brown has improved, like, he's a great example of one of those guys who is so naturally athletic that a lot of times those guys, like, they don't become super skilled because they just don't need to. You know, they learn the skills, but they never have to. It's like a really strong guy doing jujitsu, you know. He's able to learn half the technique and then he can make it work because he's so strong. Whereas like a weaker guy has to learn the technique a little better. You know, it's like the same kind of thing. When you're super athletic, you can kind of get away with halfway learning things, I think, sometimes, you know, and just lean on that athleticism. And yeah, I mean, look at Oven St. Preux. You know, obviously he's a guy who's he's gotten some submission wins, he's gotten some knockout wins. But if you really try to think about, like, what is he good at, it's hard to really break down what he's good at, because he's really strong, he's really athletic, but he's in a lot of ways not that impressive. Does that make sense? You know, like, because
Sure.
he's just so, yeah. But I do think that the athleticism is just a huge part of it here. I mean, they're both, Shogun must be what, like 40, and OSP is probably around there too, isn't he? 38, 39. I'm
Yeah.
just guessing. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, I mean, even in their primes, there was that huge athleticism gap. I mean, Shogun is technically speaking the more skilled fighter, I would say, but there's when the athleticism gap is that big, it doesn't end up it can end up not mattering when a guy is that much bigger and that much more athletic. And I think just with how late in their career they are, how long it's been since we've seen Shogun fight, it's pretty hard to confidently break down this fight from a technical perspective. I think it's really hard to really know what we are going to see from these guys or what they might look like. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to favor OSP just based on that the size and the athleticism. And yeah, it's hard to see what Shogun would be able to do to get the upper hand on him here. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it too. I'm going to pick OSP. I'm not real confident in how it ends or when it ends. I don't think it's necessarily going to go the way it did the first time. I heard that security is specifically watching for skateboards this time, and they're not allowing skateboards in the arena. So we should not see that again. But yeah, I'm gonna pick OSP here. I'm not really confident how it happens, but I would like to say before we move on that I would absolutely fucking love to see Shogun win this fight. You would too. Everybody would, right? I mean, there's probably not an outcome that would make me happier on this entire card than seeing Shogun and not even have like a quick knockout, because you can chalk that up to luck. I would love to see this fight go 15 minutes and Shogun just outclass him and beat him from pillar to post the entire time. I would probably be crying. I would be like on my feet screaming. Like I get so excited. Like I would love that. I'm like getting goosebumps talking about it. It's not going to happen, Eric. Chill out. But yeah, how great would that be?
That's such a good shout too, because it's almost like I know this is a big trope that a lot of content creators talk about, but just like athleticism is cheating, like that'll be just such a big W for the unathletic guys still
Right.
doing the damn thing. And honestly, that path to victory is there. Like I know I said there is no path to victory, but if OSP comes out strong, just expecting, I'm gonna knock you out because I already did it, and just really goes hard for the knockout and somehow he's able to survive, who knows. But let me not get Eric too excited over here. I just, man, this fight I just feel like is another moment of pain, and we're probably going to be feeling that big time. But OSP, just real random side note, I was looking through OSB's Wikipedia page as we were talking because I was trying to get his age, and then I ended up reading some interesting shit. So I didn't even give a fuck about how old he is. He is 39. But what I saw that was really cool is, first of all, obviously he was a two-sport athlete in high school, track and football, and then went on to play college football at a very high level, if you ask me, D1. But the reason why I brought this up is because after that he started and went to his amateur MMA career, and he went 5-0. And one of those, actually, he was able to get a calf slicer in his one of his amateur bouts, and that was the same year that Toby Imada got the reverse triangle against Jorge Masvidal. So that ended up winning the submission of the year for that year over that calf slicer.
Oh, okay.
But the reason why I brought that up is just like, imagine a world where you're just some dude who was training for 2 months, having fun with it, and you show up for an amateur fight and you got to fight fucking OSP. Like, god damn, like I'm sure there's so many stories of people like that, just amateur fighters that aren't really on that same level as far as this is what they want to do, this is what they're trying to get into, and then they're just looking across at just an absolute monster. So yeah, can't imagine whoever those five guards are shout out to you, because I know you were fucking petrified when you realized who you're fighting.
When you were talking about that, it reminded me of this. Like I remember watching OSP when he was Strike Force, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, yeah, he was in Strike Force. I remember watching his career when he was in Strike Force, and then I remember finding out that he was coming to the UFC, and I'm not even sure why exactly, but I remember thinking that like I wasn't expecting him to be a guy who was going to be around for a long time. Like I wasn't expecting him to be a guy who was going to be a career UFC fighter. Like I don't know if I just didn't think very highly of him, but I just specifically remember him coming to the UFC from Strikeforce and me thinking like, he's not going to be around very long. But yeah, I was very, very wrong about that.
Honestly, it's been pretty surprising how long he's been able to sort of
Yeah.
do the damn thing. And I always think of that big head kick knockout against Corey Anderson. It's like the peak OSP, because I remember I was just like, holy shit. Shout out to Corey Anderson. I don't know if I told you this story, but he was actually the first fight that I ever saw live, against John Vellante in New Jersey, 2015.
Okay.
Anyway, we move on because that was such a random tangent. Now into the true pain. So I'm going to explain this for all the fans out there, but especially because I just need to nerd out about this with Eric. So I just want to make this clear. If you're a UFC fan that just started out, in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, you don't understand who Tony Ferguson is. Like, please go back and watch his fights, the entire catalog of his. I feel like there isn't a more um, historic fighter, in my opinion, that doesn't get the fucking respect that he deserves than Tony Ferguson, because of the way the last couple of fights have gone in his career. And the shocking part about it is, um, the things that we always loved about him, as far as his um, just undescribable levels of self-belief and like willingness to, like, there's not many people that, like, everyone fucking says it, like, I'm ready to go die out there. There's not a lot of people that fight that way, and Tony Ferguson is someone that fights that way even now. Like, he still is that guy. And of course, later on in your career, that isn't the best look, isn't the best approach, especially to be winning fights at the highest level of the damn thing. But Tony Ferguson was my first ever, like, holy shit, this guy just made me feel some shit from my living room, that I didn't know I could feel. Like, this is my guy. Like, I was such a big Tony fan, throughout his entire run. I couldn't even tell you what was the first Tony Ferguson fight that I saw, but I know as soon as I saw him fight, I watched all his fights going back, and like going back crazy, like the Michael Johnson fight. That was a fight where he ended up losing. He broke his fucking arm, and he's chasing after Michael Johnson with one arm hanging by his hip. Um, just a fucking dog. And if you're disrespecting Tony Ferguson, I'm sorry. There's no room on the bus for you, buddy. I can't. This is my guy through and through. So this is gonna be painful to watch. I will say, if there's an avenue to victory here for Tony Ferguson, it's the fact that Michael Chandler is somebody who does fade late, no matter what fight it is. He's someone that always finds a way to sort of fade a little bit in that third round. And historically, that has been, the area where Tony actually sort of comes alive in those later rounds. This is just such a hard matchup because obviously the decline has been there the last couple of years. So you don't want to be fighting someone this highly ranked anyway. But the fact that you're fighting someone this highly ranked that has this much power as well, like in all phases, I feel like this could end up being a situation where we do see Tony Ferguson get knocked out for the first time, like, out really badly. And I am not prepared for that. I am not ready. It's probably what's gonna happen because MMA is a cruel bitch, and when you don't want things to happen, that's when they do. But I'm just gonna say full out from the beginning. I'm acknowledging my bias. I'm 100%. Um, no matter what happens, I'm rooting for Tony Ferguson. But the sadness hedge is here, man. 100% in my mind, Michael Chandler wins this one. But I will say, if at any point in the first 2 rounds we see Michael Chandler start wrestling and wrestling heavy, I'm gonna be hammering the live betting angle on that third round, because if you tire yourself out against Tony Ferguson, I don't care that he's not that guy anymore. He is someone that is known for pulling shit out in the deep waters. I'm just such a big fan. This is a tough one for me, but got to pick Michael Chandler here.
I think you made some really good points there. Just 1 second. As far as what you said about like that you said when you first saw Tony Ferguson, you dug back and watched his fights. Like I do think that's a fantastic idea for newer fans, like you said, newer fans who maybe are only familiar with Tony Ferguson from his more recent fights. He is someone where you definitely need to do that. You need to dig back and watch his fights and sort of experience his career. And one thing I want to say about Tony Ferguson is that I think he might be the only marriage we've ever seen of these three qualities. If for people who've watched my videos before, you probably know one of my favorite fighter archetypes is I love the great weirdos of the sport. I love Luke Kumo. I love Diego Sanchez. I love, and it kind of also goes along with the like martial arts nerds who just kind of find themselves in fighting. I don't know that Tony quite fits that mold, but I love that, just like the great weirdos of the sport. Tony Ferguson is one of the great weirdos of the sport. So he's got that going for him. He's also, like you said, one of the guys who is a true fighter to his core, like a guy who will die in the octagon, a guy who is not going to quit, has absolutely no quit in him. I believe that when he's in the ring, I don't think he even understands that life outside of the ring exists. I think he truly would die in there. And I don't even think he'd think about the fact that he has a family or whatever. Like he's that, and that probably goes along with the weirdo thing as well. But he's one of the sport's great weirdos. He's one of the true willing to die in the octagon fighters. And he's probably the only fighter in history who has those two things going for him. And also was, maybe not isn't anymore, but was truly elite. I mean, he's one of the, when you talk about the best fighters in the history of the sport that never held the belt, Tony Ferguson is absolutely one of them. So he's got those three qualities, and I think he's the only fighter in the history of the sport that marries those three qualities together, and that's really memorable for me. So I think that makes him special in the pantheon of MMA fighters in general. But yeah, this kind of like what I said about the OSP and Shogun fight, about how exciting would that be to see Shogun win. Like, yeah, Michael Chandler is going to come out here and put it on Tony Ferguson early. And like you said, yeah, like I'm like playing this out in my head. Yeah, what if we see Chandler he's landing his big shots. He's bloodying Tony up, because that's almost certainly going to happen. Tony's always had that amazing chin. And then, yeah, maybe we see Chandler wrestle, and then we get into round 2 and maybe Chandler's tiring out a little bit. And then we get into round 3 and Chandler is super tired and Tony Ferguson is bleeding, but he starts taking over. Like, oh my God. Like if that happens, it's going to be, man, there are some things that could happen. This is going to be a fun ass fight card no matter what, but there are some things that could play out on this fight card that would make it one of the greats of all time. There are some things that could happen here. So yeah, like you can't really pick Tony Ferguson here if you're being realistic with yourself. But yeah, I mean, obviously I have to pick Chandler, but yeah, definitely, my heart is with Tony, and I would love to see that happen. And I think pretty much everybody would.
For sure, man. And real quick, let's do the line game, because
Oh, sure.
I have not I completely forgot about it. No matter what it is, it's gonna be disrespectful. I just gotta say that off rip.
You're on the right track.
Okay, Michael Chandler minus 350. That
Dude,
even hurts to say.
You are killing it. Chandler's minus 360, Ferguson plus 330. Dude, you're nailing. I would not be doing well on these. That's impressive.
Oh man, dude! Real quick, I just wanted to mention some stuff, because we will nerd out about Tony Ferguson on this show. I do not care. The first fight, I looked back and made sure I got this, took place at UFC 181. He got a submission against Abel Trujillo. That was the first time I saw him fight, and I was like, "This is my guy." Like 100%, this is my guy. And just something for those of you that haven't, I'm just willing to wax poetic real quick. Something that when you talk about him being an elite fighter, something that always bugged me out about his fights too was like he fought everybody, like everybody. And the fact that he never got to fight Habib is the big meme. Like that fight, like booking that fight took a lot out of both these guys. Like even just career wise, just what potentially could have been versus what happened is so crazy to look back and think on. Because I think the first time they were supposed to fight was like in 2017 or something like that. Like we were robbed multiple times of seeing that fight. But even in the time between that, like this dude, like let me just make this clear. I'm gonna do this. I don't care if everyone knows. I'm just gonna do it. So Katsunori Kakuno, that's a name that matters to a lot of you guys out there. That's a good name. Danny Castillo, Abel Trujillo, Gleison Tebow, Josh Thompson, Edson Barbosa, Lando Venata, Rafael Dos Anjos, Kevin Lee, Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone. That's a 12 fight win streak in the UFC. Like, and against a murderer's row of opponents too. Like, and dude fought Dos Anjos at altitude, another historically great fighter, and was salsa dancing on him mid fight. Um, what made me such a fan is what you said. There was never a moment in his career where you were like 100% like he's gonna win this, because he was taking such high level fights that it's like dicey. Like I don't know what's gonna happen, but I know I'm rooting for him. I know I'm hoping he wins. And the fact that he was able to keep winning as much as he did with the style that he has, every single one of those fights, he fucking earned it. Like, please go back and watch the Lando Venata fight. That was on short notice because Habib couldn't make that event, and he almost got knocked out by Lando Venata and found a way. Like, it doesn't make sense to me how he found a way to come back in that fight and eventually get the submission in that one after what I thought was a for sure knockout. Go ahead.
I was there live for that one. That was in
No
Sioux Falls.
way.
Yeah, that was a crazy fight to be there for in person. Yeah, that was
The way his leg, like as soon as he landed, spoilers, as soon as Lando Venata landed the head kick, the way his leg like twitched, I thought he was gone. Like I thought he was not, there was no way he was going to recover from that. And he has multiple times. And I think that's what made the Justin Gaethje fight so heartbreaking for me, because even in that fight, even 4 rounds into an absolute fucking drubbing, he still had that. He still never believed, this is over and this is unachievable for me. He's fucking slapping himself and trying to will himself back into the fight. Just an all-time fucking legend, if you ask me. Sorry. That is as nerdy as it will get on this show, but Tony Ferguson is my guy, bro. Until it's over, he is my guy.
yeah. He's a truly rare human being, just in a number of ways. I mean, like he's like there's as far as just toughness and belief in himself, like you said, and just yeah, there aren't a lot of people who are built like that. And he could have ended up doing all kinds of different things, and the world would never have known that he was built like that. But he ended up becoming a fighter, and we got to see it, and that's a treat.
Man, I couldn't have said it better myself, dude. You have a way with words, man. You have a way with words. But let's move on to the biggest fights of the night. I'm honestly very excited for both of these. I think there's a lot of upset potential in both of these title fights. We got Rose Namajunas against Carla Esparza, #2. So let's do the line game, and then
Yep.
I'll let you start this one off because I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. So I would imagine they are factoring in the fact that Carla has beat her once. Um, I'm gonna go Rose Namajunas -210.
Very close, yeah. Well, she can be had for that, yeah. But the best line on her is -190.
Mm.
Come back and Carla Esparza +185. I actually, uh, this is they don't sponsor me or anything, but I'm always giving a shout out to William Hill Sportsbook, because when you look at best fight odds, it always has a little highlight on the best line that you can get, and a lot of times William Hill has a better line than anything on best fight odds. I can lead off with this. I placed a bet on Carla Esparza at +190 on William Hill just earlier today, and yeah, like it's this is a tough fight to break down. Like you said, obviously they fought before, but that was a really long time ago. I rewatched that fight the other day. Obviously they're different fighters from then, but actually I was really surprised watching that fight how similar Rose's game. I hadn't watched that fight in years. I was expecting to see a really big difference, and I was surprised how similar Rose's game actually was then to now. I think she was only like 3 fights into her career at that point. She was overly aggressive and that kind of thing, which you often see from younger fighters who haven't quite learned how to just kind of rein it back and pick their spots a little better. She's obviously, dialed it in more and that sort of thing. But stylistically, I was surprised how similar she actually was. But I do think this is a tough fight to call. I mean, obviously, as far as what they're going to try to do, it's an old school striker versus grappler type of matchup. I mean, Carla's, almost certainly the most dominant wrestler in this division. She is someone who's shown that she not only can come out and just grab a takedown immediately and just grind on top of you for the entire fight. She not only has the ability to do that, but she will do that. Like some fighters, that's their best path to victory and they have the ability to do it, but they just don't do it for some reason. Carla will, within the first 20 seconds, she'll just go for that takedown. And so, that's obviously a path to victory that makes sense here for Carla to come out and get takedowns and just be able to grind on Rose. And we've seen Rose get taken down. We've seen Rose on her back. She does have a decent get up game. Like, I don't think holding her down for 25 minutes is going to be an easy thing to do necessarily. And when they're on the feet, I think it's going to be problematic for Carla. So if she's not able to get those takedowns, I think, it ends up being, again, I hate to get super binary with it, but it ends up being a fight where the easiest way to break it down is if Carla's able to get takedowns and hold Rose down, she probably wins the fight. If she's not able to, she probably doesn't. I think it really is kind of that simple. I did, getting Carla at plus 190, I thought that there was great value there. So I did take a shot on that. As far as a pick, I don't know. I also, and this isn't even something that's really like tangible. It's more of like just kind of a narrative feeling type thing that I keep coming back to. But even though there is a clear path to victory for Carla here, skill wise, I just keep coming back to the idea that I think Rose is a special fighter who is at a special time in her career. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Rose is a very difficult fighter to beat right now. I feel like she's probably in her prime. She's clicking. Things are just kind of working for her right now. She's just, sometimes, and I don't like to buy too deeply into things like that, but sometimes a fighter is just, this is their time and they're going to be pretty tough to beat right now. And I feel like Rose might be in that time right now, even though I hate getting into stuff like that isn't really based on logic or something tangible, but I just kind of feel that a little bit. So I don't, by way of a pick, I guess I will pick Rose, but I think there is value on Carla here, and she absolutely has a solid path to victory. I talked way too long and just kind of said the same things over and over again there.
Not at all, dude. I really love that breakdown, and I think it really took us through that fight versus now, and it's a big difference. I feel like what I agree with what you said as far as the progression, but something that I wished you would have touched on a little bit more is the fact that in that first fight, Carla Esparza was a completely different fighter compared to who she is now. So much better in the sort of striking ranges, in sort of clinch grappling, getting people onto the fence, and then working from there. I just feel like she's much more comfortable everywhere in the cage than she was at that point of her career.
Yeah,
And that's such a big sort of factor in this matchup specifically because that was a little bit of the problems that even arose in the first fight, where you see those moments where things are getting dicey and she's getting put on her back foot, and it's like, oh fuck, I gotta shoot again because if I don't, like, things are gonna get bad. I don't think there's gonna be many moments like that in this fight. I think it's gonna be a little bit more collected. I think there's gonna be a lot of times where we're sort of surprised that Nama Yunus isn't doing more because she's just trying to use her skills, keep her at distance with the jab, and land nice leg kicks that are gonna pay dividends later on in the fight. I think this is gonna be a much more reserved performance from Rose than we're used to, and I think that honestly might not serve her as well as you would think it would. Even considering both Zhang Weili fights, I picked Zhang in both of those fights and confidently as well, because I feel like process wise, Zhang, in my opinion, is a better fighter, and the fact that both of those fights turned out the way they did was really fascinating because it's not just dynamicism. Like I always, for a time, I was like, It's really just power, and when she fights someone that's more powerful, she's going to lose. And I would argue that she actually lost the second Jessica Andrade fight. So for a while, that held true. But in those Joanna Jędrzejczyk's fights, I think because I was a huge fan of Joanna at the time as well, it really opened my eyes to how special of a fighter Rose is. It's not just the knockout power that makes her great. It's really the technical mind and being able to play the game, so to speak, of knowing how to win rounds, knowing when you need to win a round and how. Because sometimes you need a round more emphatically than you do early on in fights, versus being able to edge out certain rounds. So I think her fight IQ, working with Trevor Whitman, is not a surprise. It is really one of the best in the game, if you ask me. And that's what makes this matchup special, because I think Carla Esparza is of that ilk too. If you want to watch a hell of a fight, please go back and watch her fight with Tatiana Suarez, because Tatiana Suarez is a monster. Like, let me make that clear. I think if there's a dark horse at 125 that you could get a line on for 2024, hell, put it on Tatiana Suarez to beat Valentina Shevchenko, because I think she is that good. I think her ceiling is that high, and that was a fucking competitive fight. I didn't think it would be going into it. I was like, they're both trying to do the same thing, and Tatiana Suarez is bigger and stronger, so Tatiana's gonna win. She made it work for every goddamn second of that fight, and especially on the feet, showed a lot. Like, really showed a lot. So I don't think I'm not delusional. I don't think Carla Esparza is gonna hurt her on the feet or knock her out or anything like that. I don't think there's going to be much success there. I think it's going to be sort of biding time and finding the spot to really go for those takedowns. But don't expect this to be like, I desperately need a takedown, like it has been for Carla in some of her fights early on. And that's what makes this matchup really special. Special. I'm a fan of her growth. Shout out to Colin Oyama and that team. Really did a good job with a lot of their fighters, but especially Carla. I feel like she's really coming to her own. I love that she's waited for this matchup too. All that she's been thinking about is fighting Rose for over a year now, and I think that always helps. I know I said all these things about Carla Esparza, so it sounds like I'm going to pick her, but I'm not. I'm going with Rose in this one. But I will admit, I feel like I agree with what you said. I think we're in a very special time in this division, period, because I feel like there's a lot of, you could argue, sort of, how do I say this, generational fighters that are here at the same time at 115. And Joanna's coming back too, so that just adds another name to that list. I'm really excited for the future of this division. I will not be surprised if within 2 fights Rose retires. I won't be surprised by that at all. I feel like she's a little tired of the game in some ways. Um, but I'm not questioning anyone's hunger. I think ultimately you have to pick Rose Namajunas skill for skill in this fight. But at the same time, I do see paths for victory for Carla, and this is a hell of a matchup if you ask me. I love that it's a rematch. I love that she was asking for it too. Um, if she wins this in a big way, like finishes her even in sort of 3 rounds or something like that, um, it's really a capstone to an already Hall of Fame career, if you ask me.
I think you made some really great points there, especially about the growth in Carla's game. Yeah, that wasn't something that I had really thought about. One thing I want to mention, and kind of like what I said about OSP, like when he was coming over from Strikeforce, and I can't even put my finger on why this is exactly, but you mentioned Rose's fights with Joanna. I can't remember what you said exactly, but something about how um, kind of first becoming aware of how good she really was and some of the wrinkles in her game from fighting Joanna. And that was my experience. I can't put my finger on why exactly, but Rose was one of those fighters that I didn't think highly of early on. Um, I didn't just dislike her as a person or anything like that, but I didn't think of her. The Joanna, she fought Joanna twice, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
The first Joanna fight was kind of the eye-opening moment for me where I realized how good Rose really was. And I think you said something kind of similar to that. But yeah, that's definitely what that was for me, where I was like, I don't know how I never noticed this before, but Rose Namajunas is a legit talent. Like somehow somehow I don't know if I'd closed my mind to that possibility or what, but that's when I really came around to it, was that first Joanna fight.
And that's a real good show. I feel like it's really because of that dynamicism factor. Like I think you and I are people that lean towards sort of replicable results. Like if you could do that, you're okay. You could hit a flying armbar once in your career, but can you do it again? And I think that's what really stood out in the second Joanna fight. Like I was like, uh, it could have been a fluke. It was a first round knockout. She had a tough weight cut, sort of all these built in excuses. And then they rematch. And I was there in the building for that second fight,
Oh, nice.
losing my mind, by the way. There was a lot of Joanna fans there with me as well. But I was scoring it live. I scored it for Joanna. When I watched it back, I was like, I don't know how the fuck I scored that for Joanna. It was totally me being a prisoner of the moment. Just that's when, for me, more than anything, where I snapped out of it. I'm like, okay, it isn't just fuck you because you beat one of my favorite fighters. It's like, damn, like she is really good, and being able to sort of have two moments like that now where you had a capstone win in your career against the current champion, and then you come back and you beat them again, and it is not because you do it again. It's because you show not only that was I able to knock you out in the first, but I'm also able to systematically take you apart, even when you think that you're getting towards the areas where you're going to do better. I'll flip it on you. I'll take Zhang Weili down in the fifth round. I'll do the same thing to Joanna in that fifth round, in a very close back and forth sort of Muay Thai style fight. So I think there's a lot of, honestly, and I hope this isn't a casual take, but I think there's a lot of John Jones in Rose Namajunas' game. I think she does a lot of sort of meeting people head on where they think their skills lie, and proving to them, it isn't just the kickboxing. Like I can do this too, and I'm better at you than you are, better at this than you are. So, and that speaks to the sort of all-time great aspect of it. I would love to see a third fight between her and Jessica Andrade. I feel like that would be the perfect sort of send me home, I'll see you later fight. But even if she were to retire after this one, I think she's a Hall of Famer for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned that about, that you wouldn't be surprised if she retires in a couple fights, and there's been in the last few years, there's kind of been rumblings of that she doesn't want to do this anymore, or kind of isn't feeling it or wants to retire or whatever. And I think that's, I can't point to a specific reason that I feel this, but I think one thing that I've always kind of felt about Rose, and it makes it all that more impressive, that the things that she's been able to do, is she's never struck me as someone who wanted to be a fighter. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
She's all like, she's just, and I don't really know that much about her background. It wouldn't be that hard to just pull up her wiki and look. I just never have. I don't know that much about when she started training, what she started training first, how she ended up training MMA. I don't know that. Those would be easy enough questions to answer, I suppose. But she just strikes me as someone who, all along, I felt like she was someone who sort of fell into this and maybe didn't, a little bit like GSP, I guess. Like GSP loved training martial arts. He never loved fighting. He always said that he hated the fight. He's like, from the moment I walk into the octagon to the moment I walk out of the octagon is my least favorite part of all of this. And I've always felt like Rose is a little bit that way. I've always felt like I don't know if Rose even likes being a fighter. And so that makes it all that more impressive that she's ended up being such a great one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a real awesome shout. I love that we get into a lot of spots. It's funny. I think that we should we should make a meme about this, because there's been so many times whenever I've had you on that both of us, as soon as we finish talking, we're like, I love what you said there, because that's exactly what I would have said. And then we go back and forth doing that, and then waxing poetic going back and forth too. But I think it's well deserved, especially with this matchup. I think uh, I feel like all the talk this week is about how Rose Namajunas could get upset here, versus talking about what a special talent she is. So I'm glad we got that out. But we still got a main event to talk about,
Yes, sir.
folks. We still got a main event to talk about. 14 fights in, god damn it. Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. This is another fight. If you ask me, like, hey, have these guys fought? I'll be like, hell
Yeah.
yeah, they fought already, and they haven't. So it's so awesome that we're able to get this one. I'm gonna do the line game, and then I'm gonna force you to go first again, brother. So
Okay.
please, do you got it pulled up? Are you ready?
It should be right. Hold on, I'm gonna have to pull it up on William Hill because sometimes on best fight odds they're a little goofy here.
Mhm.
All right.
So I'm gonna go into my rationale for this one.
Okay,
So
go for it.
I think beating Dustin Poirier is going to give him a huge bump in this one. But I still think the lines should be close for this matchup. I think Justin Gaethje is an all-time great UFC fighter, and he's barely been in the UFC. What is it? I think 7 or so fights now into his UFC career. And he's given us so many great performances that I think it's sort of warranted. I'm gonna say Charles Oliveira minus 160.
Minus 170.
Oh man,
Damn, dude, you're
nice.
killing it on these. Yeah, Gaethje plus 150.
All right, man. So
Very nice.
please, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, man, because I have been. This is another one that I'm going back and forth on.
You know, it's even though we've already done a bunch of nerding out and going on tangents, like it's hard to talk about this fight without talking about the career of Charles Oliveira and just talking about who he is and what he's done, right? I mean, he's a dude who was, I mean, he was pretty close to a 500 fighter, I think, at one point. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think he was something like 10-8 in the UFC or something like that. He was, you know, he was. I mean, obviously, he's been around forever. He was a guy. He was one of those dudes that was like, I was always aware of him. I always thought he was good, but he was never a dude who was like really in the conversation for a long time. You know, like yeah, he'd win some, he'd lose some, but he wasn't a guy who was thought of as elite. He was good, perhaps even quite good, but never a top level guy or anybody that I expected was ever going to be really. And it's just it's so amazing to see those kind of careers play out, you know, like I mean he's the classic example of a guy that you can talk about that just paid his dues and kept working and kept putting the time in, and he always believed in himself. I mean, he's one of those dudes who will tell you now, like, you know, I think some fighters get to that point in their career, you know, you're like 20 fights into your UFC career and you're fighting at about 500, winning some, losing some guys I think kind of just settle into their role a little bit, you know, and they're like, you know, I'm a career UFC fighter. I'm lucky. This is what I want to do and I'm getting to do it. I'm making money, I'm winning some, I'm losing some. People know my name. I've got a little bit of fame on some level. Like it's an awesome life. It's a better life than most of us are ever going to get to have. But Charles Oliveira was clearly not happy with that. And he always believed that he was going to be great. And I just think that's amazing because a lot of people believe that they're going to be great, and first of all, they're wrong. They believe they're going to be great, and it's like delusional. But Charles Oliveira believed he could be great because he knew that he could be. It makes me think of like if you remember that moment when Brendan Schaub was on Joe Rogan's podcast, that incredibly uncomfortable moment when Joe Rogan explained to him that he was never going to be champion. And he like asked him like, are you still fighting because you think you're going to be champion? And Brendan Schaub was like, yeah. Like, why would I be doing this otherwise? And Rogan was like, dude, I mean, that's not going to happen for you. Like fighters have to think that way. And so many of them do. And it's hard to know if they really, really believe it or if they just kind of have to tell themselves they believe it. But Charles Oliveira, I can't think of another example of a fighter for whom it played out quite that way when he really had just been at that level where he's just kind of having a career, getting by, winning some, losing some, and then he went on what a 8-fight win streak or something. I don't remember what it was exactly, but
I think it's 10 now.
yeah, I think 10. That's I was gonna say 10 too. Yeah, but it's just awesome because it's not something that we see happen very often, and it's awesome that it happened. And yet, you know, there was a narrative around him for a long time that he was a quitter, that he was a guy who didn't have the heart to tough it through tough spots and in fights. And you know, I guess I get why that was there. We did see some moments that were a little bit questionable, but I keep forgetting where I'm actually going with this. But the fact that he's not only has he stuck it out and beaten a lot of great fighters and gotten to where he is, but he obviously was able to continue to improve his game. I mean, he's a dangerous striker now. Like what how do you know what if you would have told me however many years ago that was going to be the case, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But you know, for a long time he was a guy, not like he wasn't serviceable elsewhere, but he was a submission or bust kind of guy, you know, and that's not the case anymore. I mean, he's a guy who is dangerous everywhere at any point in the fight. and that's, I don't know, just what he has turned himself into is just really impressive, and what he's able to do against a wide range of fighters with a wide range of skills is really impressive. But getting to this particular matchup with Gaethje, obviously it's concerning that um, Charles Oliveira's MO is get dropped early, right? I mean, that's kind of what we've been seeing from him lately, and that is something that is really concerning here. Is that it? Is he going to be able to? If he does get dropped early, if Gaethje is able to land, I mean, is that going to be all it takes? Like, he's shown a great ability to recover from those spots and to handle himself really well in those spots, but that's something that you're talking about, minuscule little things that can make such a big difference in something like that, with exactly how a punch lands, exactly how you do or don't turn out of it or lean out. There's just so many little things that can play into that Gaethje could very easily just land that big one early in the fight and it could be done. I mean, very easily that could happen, but he could also very easily land that big one and Oliveira drops, and then Gaethje's trying to get on top of him and Oliveira is able to scramble and take his back. I mean, he's so slick in getting into the positions he wants to be in. So even if he's hurt, like and that's why, yeah, like I don't have a strong lean on how this fight will play out. If I have to pick, like it's hard to pick against Oliveira in this spot. Obviously there's the path to victory for Gaethje is clear and it's there, but if I have to lean one way or the other, I gotta think, just because we've seen him do it a few times in a row now, that he's able to take that early punishment and survive and find his moment. Whether it's taking the back or whether it's even finding the moment with strikes, which we've seen him do that as well. Regardless, this is a really exciting fight, and we're really lucky. You were talking about this earlier when we were talking about Rose. Like, we're just really lucky to be fans of the sport at this time. And this is really nerdy, but MMA is pretty much my one and only interest, and it's the thing I think about all the time. And like, I will literally sometimes lay in bed at night, and while I'm trying to fall asleep, and I will think about, like, what will MMA be like 50 years from now or 100 years from now? What kinds of fighters will there be? And I literally sometimes get bummed out thinking about the fact that someday I have to be dead and I can't watch fights anymore. That sounds ridiculous, but it's really something that I think about, like, oh, in the future, there are going to be all these amazing fighters that I'm never going to get to see because I'm not going to be around anymore. But I just want us to take a moment to appreciate the things that we are seeing happen in this sport now, the fighters that we are getting to watch on a regular basis, the matchups that we are getting to see. It's very, very exciting, and we are lucky to be a part of this, and this fight is a big part of that. This whole fight card is really exciting, and what an amazing fight to cap it off. And I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm going to pick Chucky Olives. I'm not going to be bummed out either way, because both these guys are awesome, and it's going to be a great fight either way. But yeah, I'm going to lean Oliveira.
Dude, I got goosebumps. That was awesome, man. I just got to say that was awesome. Hearing all aspects of that, but that last part, I feel the same exact way. And it's funny enough, I pretty much had that same exact thought before, where I'm like, oh man, there's gonna be so much cool shit. Like, I'm not even gonna be able to see, because it's gonna be growing at that rate. I mean, just think about how things have changed from 1997 to now,
Yeah.
versus how many years in the future. This is going to be such a different sport, and I just hope I'm around to see these fighters get the due that they deserve, because even to this day, we see Dana White fucking making these excuses on interviews, talking about how the reason why his pay in the UFC looks so bad compared to boxing is because the fighters in boxing are getting overpaid, because they're getting paid too much. Really, brother, like, really. If there's anything, that was a big part of my fandom when I first got into the sport, was I just couldn't believe that these guys were doing the shit guys and girls, I might add, doing the shit that they're doing week in and week out, and not getting paid the way these other athletes are. It's insane that we're still in the sort of leather helmets era of MMA, and it's at the peak of sports entertainment. Like, everyone knows what MMA is now. It is not a fringe sport the way it was when I first came into it. So it's just been, like you said, such a ride to watch all of this. And I love that you wax poetic on Charles Oliveira, because I can make my Charles Oliveira feel a little shorter. I just wanted to say something that I think you touched on but didn't get too deep on, that I really want to make a highlight of. I think the quitter narrative of his career, I think early on, especially, it was easy to make that argument because he had that sub or bust sort of reputation. It was easy to say, well, look in this fight where he wasn't able to get this and then he just got stopped. Well, look at the guys he was facing. Like there's a lot of really good underrated names on that list. And a big moment in Charles Oliveira's career that I remember very vividly was that Max Holloway fight. And that was a main event in Canada. And he ended up losing because of some sort of freak esophagus injury that
Oh
stopped
yeah,
the
I
fight.
remember that. Yep.
Yeah, it was such a like it was such a random end to the fight that I was like, did I miss a punch or something? Like, did I not see that correctly? And then they explained that there was an injury, and that's why he ended up stopping, because he felt something he never felt before, and was like, yeah, fuck this. And my immediate thought, as such a casual back then, I was extremely casual back then. I'm like, this dude, he just fucking gave up. Like, that's how I looked at it. Like, he just didn't want to fight. Like, and that's such a dumb way. Obviously now my perspective has changed fully on that, but it's just so funny looking back at that time. I'm like, this dude's a fucking quitter, and it's easy to make that sort of argument about him in his early career. But the way he's turned things around, it has been fucking phenomenal to watch. Like you said, I think the big aspect of it is his vision. I don't know if he got a procedure to get it fixed or not. I just feel like he is someone that you can tell had vision issues, and I feel like that was a narrative. I hope I'm not just making that shit up, because I feel like he did have some sort of procedure to correct his vision, and that's helped him with his striking. I hope I'm not making that up. I could be. I promise I could
I'm
be.
not sure.
But that is something that if you don't mind, while I continue to wax poetic, if you could try to verify that for me. But I think what I really loved about watching his growth is, like you said, just overcoming all those archetypes that everyone said that he was this person, and just he's always showed those flashes. I mean, the way he submitted Will Brooks always sticks out in my mind. Like, man, this guy is he's so good. Like, at 155, he's not even supposed to be at 155. He wants to fight at 145. He's arguing with the matchmakers, like, no, I swear I can make weight, after he missed it, like, I think 4 times. And he missed weight initially in his first fight at 155 as well. So I think that also added to the quitter narrative, the fact that he had those sort of big time weight misses in his career. I think that added to that sort of narrative. And I think later on in this second half of his career, where he's able to put everything together, not be sort of hesitant in the striking ranges, and put himself in the fire in a lot of ways. A big fight that sticks out to me that probably nobody gives a shit about is the Charles Oliveira versus David Tamor fight. That's a throwback for you guys. Please watch that fight, because that was the turning point where I realized now he's dangerous on the feet. It's not just in the grappling ranges. Because going into that, I was like, yeah, Charles Oliveira is probably going to win by submission real quick. And he dropped Tamer in that fight and had a back and forth war with him. So, like you said, big fan of Charles Oliveira. I really like his career path and the way he's grown. And it's an all-time sort of historic moment that we're glad to be a part of. Because, dude, there's not a lot of people that can stick around that long, that started young and didn't have a huge decline at this rate of their career, and is able to sort of find their own footing in a way that you never expected. So big shouts to Charles Oliveira. But you would think I'm fucking picking Charles Oliveira with the way I cap this. Not at all, my friends. I'm going with Justin Gaethje off the top. I'm going to let you guys know that, and then I'm going to go into my analysis. So I really feel like when it comes to this matchup specifically, you're sort of banking on the power matchup. You're banking on the fact that Justin Gaethje is going to be able to land hard and do something to sort of um, change the course of the fight early on. Now, what really changed my mind about the way I'm looking at this fight is the fact that Justin Gaethje said some things about basically like if he does submit me, if he does try to start grappling with me, like I'm basically going to be in a bad spot, but he's going to have to go through hell to get there. And that's always been his MO, no matter who he's facing. Um, but seeing the way he's become just a much more process oriented fighter under Trevor Whitman has been just a marvel to watch. Like, let me make this clear. I've been a fan of Justin Gaethje since when he was in the World Series of Fighting. And it wasn't because I was like, man, this dude could be champion one day. It's almost same thing with Charles Oliveira. It was almost like he's here for a good time and not a long time. He's going to be here for a couple years and a flash in the pan, because you cannot fight the way he does and have a long sustainable career. That's how I looked at it, because that's how crazy those fights were. Please, if you haven't seen them, go back and watch the Luis Palomino fights way back when. It was just fucking all-time blood and guts wars with people that you probably never even heard of. Just going out there and honestly foregoing any sort of game plan, foregoing any thought process on how my skills versus your skills match up. No, we're going to go out there and we're going to try to kill each other until one of us dies. And that's how this is going to work. And for a long time in his career, even into his UFC career, that's who he was. That's what he did. And I never thought that that would be something that he could change or that he could address, because if you're a coach of someone like that, you don't think they tried that already? Like you don't think Trevor Whitman has come in with a proper game plan for him in all those fights where he's going nuts? Hell yeah, he has. It just some people react to those lights very differently, and I feel like he is one of those guys that you can't tell him shit. Like even in the corner, sometimes they're talking to him and he's just there like, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna fuck him up again, and not taking into account anything that's sort of being said to him. So his sort of career trajectory has been something to watch too, because he's been able to rein that in a way that I never thought he would. When I watched, for example, that's another part that made the Tony Ferguson fight so heartbreaking, because I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? This isn't the Justin Gaethje that I signed up for. This isn't the fight that I envisioned playing out. So it's a huge credit to him and his career. The success he had against Khabib, I feel like everyone just tries to make him some sort of footnote in Khabib's career or something at this point. Revisionist history 100%. I think when we were watching that fight, everyone felt like, holy shit, like this is the guy that might do it. Like this is the guy that really could finish Khabib and was doing the damage to set himself up to do just that. I don't think there's a man alive. Let me make this very, I feel very convicted in this. I don't think there's a man alive that could take the will out of Justin Gaethje the way Khabib did, just by pressure alone, because that's who Justin Gaethje is. Justin Gaethje is that pressure fighter, and he got drowned in that fight. And it wasn't just the grappling. It was mostly on the feet. It was mostly being able to push him back in that range. And there's, like I said, there's nobody, nobody in the UFC, in my opinion, or out there at the moment that can do that again. So let me make that clear. That's why, once again, Khabib is a very special fighter. That should not be dismissed in this conversation. But in this matchup, I really feel like my issue is, and I've been counting on this to happen the last three times Charles Oliveira's fought. I said, well, at some point that guy that we once knew is going to come out again, and I've said that over and over again. And like you said, it's kind of hard to keep banking on that when he keeps showing us otherwise. But at the same time, what I can point to is the fact that he's had those moments in most of, if not all, of his recent fights, where he's having that sort of issues early, and then comes off the stool and just comes alive in the second round in a way that um, at this point I guess should be expected. But even then, you can't expect that out of anyone. Like, there's no reason to believe when you're watching a fight. This is why live betting, I'm sure, makes the books a lot of fucking money, because there's nobody that you see in the corner and you're like, yeah, they were losing that whole round. They almost got knocked out, but I'm telling you, this is the round where they're going to turn it around. Like that shit is so rare to happen. And the fact that he's able to do that over and over again, it does scare me in picking Gaethje in this one. But I just can't imagine a scenario where Gaethje puts himself in the same position that he did against Khabib. I think he's going to be able to do some of the same things that he did against Khabib as far as landing hard leg kicks, keeping him at distance, landing strong power shots, but being able to keep him at range and be the advancing party of that sort of pressure exchange. I think there's going to be moments too where Charles Oliveira is putting the pressure on Gaethje as well, and I think those moments are really going to tell us. I think we're going to know very quickly if that storm is coming when it's happening. Like we're gonna feel it. But at the same time, I just feel like the fact that we see him get hurt so often, and we've only seen Gaethje get drowned once. I don't think it's gonna happen again. Personally, I think Gaethje's gonna. I think there's a path for Gaethje by decision. I don't think it's just sort of knockout or bust. I think, especially with the way he's been able to rein things in, that's a very likely outcome. It does concern me that there's some rumors that he doesn't do too much training in the submission grappling phases of things. I know he has a very strong collegiate wrestling background that he sort of leans on. And that might be the reason why he's just like, I'm tired of doing this shit. I did it for X amount of years and it's been fun learning how to fight. You clearly see he loves it. So that's a very interesting dynamic too that makes this a very hard fight to pick, because you could argue that Justin Gaethje is this much better of a striker than Charles Oliveira. But the same thing goes for Charles Oliveira's grappling. I would say he's a much better grappler than Gaethje. But at the same time, have we seen anybody dominate Gaethje besides Khabib? No. So it's just such a hard fight to gauge because of those intangibles. Super excited to watch it because I think both of these guys are really historic fighters that have not only um, changed the course of public opinion on them, but they've really went against sort of the archetype that they've got put in. And to be able to do that in any sport is fucking difficult. But at the highest level, in a cage fight against someone that's trying to take your head off, to be able to be disciplined after getting dropped. And this is a big point for me too, because I rate Tony Ferguson very highly. After getting dropped by Tony Ferguson, still being able to collect yourself after that and put yourself back into the fire. Getting dropped early against multiple guys, Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier. These are people that ended up winning those matchups. But you could argue, in some ways, if he was the fighter he is now, those fights don't play out the way they did. It was just because in that stage of his career, he was so kill or die that he didn't really give a shit, and it was just it's you or me out there. So I'm glad that we both got to take turns on who we're gonna nerd out about. I'm picking Justin Gaethje in this one, and this fight is gonna be fucking awesome.
Dude, that was awesome. You made some really great points there. Like I think it's interesting that you can look at it as, like you said, these are two fighters that in very different ways, but these are two fighters who weren't really expected to be where they are right now for different reasons. These are two fighters that have been around for a long time, have been fan favorites to different levels, but are probably not, 10 years ago or whatever, we probably didn't expect to see Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje as the two best in the sport fighting for the title. For different reasons, we just would have not expected to see that. Like you said, like you don't very often see the fighter that gets sort of pigeonholed as the killer be killed action fighter rarely becomes the elite title challenger. That's two very different kinds of fighters, and rarely the twain shall meet. Like it's usually not. And yeah, that's a really great point, that he was always an exciting fighter to watch. He was always a fighter that was capable of big exciting moments, but he wasn't, because of that approach and because of the way he found his finishes, he wasn't someone that was necessarily going to be earmarked as a future champion. And yeah, he made the appropriate changes, just like Oliveira did. The more we talk about it, the more excited I get about this fight and about just about this card in general. This is going to be, like I said, we're damn lucky. This is going to be Saturday is going to be a lot of fun.
For sure, man. This has been awesome. This whole card breaking down everything and sort of going back and forth. There's so much here that we talked about, and I'm sure if you let us, we'll go another fucking hour and a half on this. So thank you for giving me the spot to sort of say, hey, enough is enough. So once again, Erik, thank you so much for coming on. This was fucking awesome. I think title fights really do bring the best out of us, and I think we both really did such a bang up job with these last two fights of sort of breaking them down and the dynamic of it. So this has been a pleasure for me as always. Please make sure you check out his stuff when he reiterates his information. Just a little quick reminder for you guys: make sure you check out Negrong MMA on Twitter, as well as Chris Negrong _ on Instagram. You could also catch me at OTS Media. Please follow the brand. More so than anything, make sure you're following what we're doing there. We got a lot of really fun, cool stuff coming up. Um, got our first sponsor. Shout out to Champs. Please make sure you order yourself some of the best underwear in the goddamn world. There will be no such thing as swamp ass ever again in your life. All of that gets whisked away. So please get some Champs underwear. That link is in the bio, and make sure that you check out everything we got going on at OTS Media. But with that being said, please, Erik, tell them where they can find your stuff once again and take us home.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much again for bringing me on. Like you said, this is always a blast. I was right before I popped on the stream with you here. I was telling my wife like, oh, I got to go do a show right now. I was like, it's probably going to be like 2.5 hours. Chris and I usually go like 2.5 hours, and she said something like, "Oh, that's a bummer," something like that. And I was like, "No, no, it's fun. Like I'm not dreading it. Like we're going to sit and talk for 2.5 hours, and it's going to be a blast. And I'm going to forget I'm on camera and end up picking my nose or something like it." But like, no, yeah, this is always a lot of fun. Like I said, I don't even feel like I'm doing a show. I always just feel like I'm kind of just hanging out talking about fights, and that's great. I couldn't ask for much more than that. I'm really glad that I've met you and that we've connected through this whole beautiful world of MMA and content creation, and I look forward to working with you more in the future. And thank you to everyone who is listening. And yeah, you can find me again, Twitter, Erikbetsfights. I'm on YouTube at Erikbetsfights. Every week on YouTube, I do a full card breakdown. Usually I get that out on Wednesday, and then I do a show called Big Money Bets that I do live on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, which would be 10 p.m. Eastern, I guess. And then Saturdays, the day of UFC cards, you can find me on DFS by the Numbers YouTube, or yeah, DFS by the Numbers YouTube channel. We do a show called Best Bets that starts an hour before the fights kick off. It's a panel of me and 3 other guys, and we go through the entire card. We break it down a little bit. We give our favorite bet for each fight, and then the show ends right as the first fight kicks off. So it's kind of a last stop to get some degen action in if you want. And yeah, I would love it if you all would check out my stuff on YouTube and visit me at those spots. And again, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. If you're down, if you're still here after all this time, you're a goddamn real one. Thank you
Oh,
so much,
kidding.
you guys, for all the support. I really mean it when I say we fucking feel it. Like any sort of little thing that you guys do, I'm speaking for myself here, but I'm sure you feel the same way. There's a lot of times where I'm legitimately humbled, and like you said, I think our friendship and what we've been able to sort of cultivate here together, I feel like that's something that I even couldn't believe when we first started sort of discussing and becoming close and getting on these shows together. Because I was like, you know, someone likes what I do. Like someone watches what I do and actually thinks it's cool. Like it's fucking crazy. I would do this if nobody was. I honestly still feel that same way. So whenever I see anything really, you guys really give me a lot of motivation. You give me a big boost to continue doing what I already would be doing without you guys. So thank you so much. I really appreciate every little bit of support. Keep it coming and make sure, like Erik says on many of his shows, make sure you go out there and reach out to your favorite content creator. Let them know why you think they're special and why their shit matters to you, because trust me, it matters to them and it has mattered for me. So thank you so much, guys. Hope you have a good one and enjoy the goddamn fights, baby. Peace.
Take care, everybody.